Hannah Montana is my favorite television program of all time. Yes, that is counting sitcoms, be they for children or adults, cartoons, original movies, reality shows, you name it. Whatever it is, I guarantee you that an elementary-aged me could argue you down about how the first 3 seasons of Hannah Montana are superior. I loved everything about this show. The premise of the secret pop star life, the cast that felt like my second family while I was estranged from my real one via Child Protective Services, and most of all, I adored the leading lady herself. When I was 7 years old, Miley Cyrus was to me a best friend, an older sister, a role model, and a deified idol all at the same time. She was 90% of what I thought about from dawn to dusk, and half of the time I would see her in my dreams. A lot of people know me on the internet to be a loud and proud Swiftie, but I can guarantee you that a 9-year-old Bela would have happily burned her guitar and made a blanket of her curls just to keep Miley Cyrus warm. And obviously, it wasn't just me. She was the main topic of conversation among my peers. I think a lot of people who didn't experience it in real time could never truly understand the unrivaled monocultural saturation of Hannah Montana at the peak of the phenomenon. She was on your classmate's backpack, binder, and t-shirts, maybe even her shoes. You could walk into Walmart and see Miley Cyrus's face in every aisle, printed on everything from apparel to decorum to toilet seat covers. It was like my personal heaven. Everywhere I went, I was reminded of my favorite thing. The glamorous allure of Hannah Montana permeated the mainstream to the point where the sitcom itself became almost obsolete to many people. But not to me. Before the merchandising, before the world tours, the multi-platinum selling soundtracks, all of it. In my world, the foundation that I always cared about beyond anything else was the TV show that I fell in love with. I cared about Miley Stewart's well-being. I cared about her relationships with her friends and the trials and tribulations that came with her secretive lifestyle. I wanted the best for her. And that's precisely why I always hated Hannah Montana forever. You know, for a long time, it was hard for me to quite put my finger on what exactly it was about the retitled Season 4 that just didn't sit right within my spirit. Was it the completely foreign setting and newfound high definition that made it feel like I was watching an entirely different TV show? Maybe it was the skeletal cast that made the world feel simultaneously larger and emptier at the same time? Perhaps even just the hair. Between the highlights and glamorous extensions Miley Cyrus had installed by 2010, you can hardly tell the difference between her and Hannah anymore.
Hope you guys are ready because here is my new hair color in 3, 2, 1.
In the early seasons of the show, the wig was like a superpower. It was Clark Kent taking off his glasses. It was Goku going Super Saiyan. Peter Parker getting bit by a radioactive spider. It wasn't just a change in hair color, it was an ascension of her energy into something magical. By season 4, it doesn't even blend into her scalp anymore. You can basically see the wig trying to rip itself off as the actress underneath has clearly outgrown it. And while all of that is emblematic of a lot of the underlying issues here, after watching this entire series front to back for the first time in about 15 years, I discovered that the problem isn't really within the aesthetics at all. It's within the writing and the storyline. Believe it or not, rewatching Hannah Montana Forever as a grown adult actually pissed me off substantially more than it did when I was a child. From the blatantly flawed morality thrust upon Miley, to the plot regression of Jackson, to the blatant character assassination of Jake Ryan, this season felt like it was concocted by a group of people who wanted to watch the world burn, as well as crumble the childhoods of millions of innocent preteens in the process. In my opinion, Hannah Montana Forever has not gotten nearly enough retrospective backlash for just how aggravating of a conclusion it serves as to the greatest Disney Channel umpire in history. And today, I intend to change that. I am going to deconstruct piece by piece precisely why Hannah Montana Forever is inarguably a steaming pile of narrative dishonesty and corporate dreck that spits in the face of its own characters, as well as insults the intelligence and dedication of its longtime audience. But in order to fully articulate why this season is such a train wreck, I suppose we have to dig into the meat of what the show Hannah Montana was in the first place. In retrospect, it's extremely ironic just how much conversation in the late 2000s to mid-2010s was focused on whether or not Miley Cyrus was a good role model, when a far more foundational error in the Hannah Montana brand was present from the very beginning had parents been paying a little bit more attention. Miley Stewart is not a very good role model. Now, this isn't to say that she's a bad person, well, not necessarily all the time at the very least, but she is absolutely not somebody that you should aspire to be like or model your life after. While in the first couple of seasons Miley is mostly a good-hearted kid, she's far from honest or selfless most of the time. She goes to absurdly cartoonish lengths on a regular basis just to maintain even the most trivial of perceived benefits, constantly digging holes deeper and deeper and then trying to fill them in with more lies. She's constantly lying to her family, her friends, her teachers, and by season 3, she begins to rapidly fly even more off the handle. By the age of 16, Miley Stewart is shamelessly selfish. She's outright sneaky and conniving much of the time, and she has no problem scheming and deceiving people to get what she wants, often putting the well-being of herself as well as others at risk in the process. This is a version of Miley that will lead on a short guy she doesn't actually like just so she can prove to her friends that she's not shallow. This is the Miley who bribes a DMV worker and commits identity fraud just so she could get her license 2 weeks early. The Miley who initially stands up her autistic prom date so she can record a duet with David Archuleta. Absolute banger, by the way. She even utilizes her brother's amnesia to manipulate him into becoming her personal servant. As the series goes on, it becomes more and more frequent to find the plot of any given episode revolving entirely around Miley just being a compulsive liar. Eventually, you start to realize that Miley isn't doing this because she thinks it's going to help her get what she wants. She does it because it's all she knows how to do. After all, her entire life is predicated on a lie. From the age of 11, every waking moment of her life has been dedicated to making sure people don't find out her secret. And this is really where we have to talk about the overarching entity here, her father. We have to remember that even though Miley Stewart is Hannah Montana, she didn't necessarily create Hannah Montana. It's heavily implied throughout the series that the decision to create the character of Hannah was a mutual one that Robbie Ray and Miley both made together, which is hard to believe was really a 50-50 decision when you consider the fact that Miley was literally a 6th grader at the time of creation. Needless to say, it's far more likely that Robbie Ray convinced her it was a good idea to maintain a secret private identity than it is that the 11-year-old who wanted to be famous single-handedly surmised an entire business model to stay anonymous and grounded. Robbie Ray isn't just Miley's father. He's her overseer. He's effectively her puppeteer. Just think, he's her guardian, her manager, and her agent all at once. He was the one with the connections. He was the one who likely picked out the record label that Miley would be on. He approves what she does and doesn't wear, what she does and doesn't sing, and what she does and doesn't do on stage. He even fully controls her finances. She effectively works for him, bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars a year. I mean, you have to think, Hannah Montana in universe has 14 #1 songs by the age of like 16. Hannah Montana is already an umpire that made billions of dollars for Disney in real life. Can you imagine how much money Robbie Ray alone would make if he was effectively the entire team behind Hannah Montana in a universe where it's even more exponentially successful as a brand? This family is beyond loaded. Yet even as the years go by, Miley has extremely limited direct access to said money. At one point, Robbie gives his kids emergency debit cards. It says credit cards in the show, but I'm a firm believer that the concept of credit doesn't exist when you have $400 million. He deals these out with the expectation that the two of them will absolutely never spend any of the money unless it's effectively a live or die situation. There's literally an episode where Robbie Ray won't let her buy a phone. Seriously, she can't buy a goddamn phone with her own money that she busts her ass to earn. And he tries to act as if this is some lesson in responsibility. She's Hannah Montana, dude. Just let her have the fucking phone. At one point in season 3, she begs him for an extra allowance and he gives her $5,000. By the way she acts, you can tell this is by far and away the most money she's ever had on her person her entire life. And while it's hard to really feel bad for her, after all, she's fundamentally still extremely rich, it is worth noting how irrationally strict he is with her personal budget. And his rule definitely doesn't stop there. He even dictates the very thesis of her career by writing her songs for her. This is a very strange dynamic between a formerly famous father and his preteen protege. Somehow, it would feel more authentic if Hannah's songs were being written by a focus group of professional songwriters. Instead, they're being written by one 40-year-old man in complete solitude. These glossy pop songs about her secret identity and boys and relationships and partying and friendship. Robbie Ray vicariously lives through Miley. He observes her interpersonal turmoil and writes fan fiction about what he thinks she's feeling. Then he has her sing it all back to him. He has a complex fascination with his own daughter specifically because of her star power. Take, for example, how he treats his son. He's constantly talking down to Jackson, calling him stupid and talentless, shamelessly making him feel inferior to his sister and only deciding to build him up whenever she falls flat. He allows his son to live in filth. He sees Jackson floundering and flailing to keep up in life, and he just does hardly anything about it. All of his energy is channeled into making sure that Miley is operating at top capacity at all times. Robbie Ray has curated a reality for Miley in which she thinks she's on a pedestal because she deserves to be, where she can have her cake and eat it too. And she believes this is genuinely beneficial to her, but what she doesn't realize is that her father has actually neutralized her. Robbie Ray isn't just possessive over Miley's talent, he feels threatened by it. He knew from a young age that Miley was destined to be a star, and instead of letting her discover that for herself as she aged into adolescence, he decided to expedite it in a fashion where she could perpetually stay underneath his thumb. If Robbie Ray really cared about Miley having a normal life, he would simply let her live one. A normal life would be Miley continuing to sing in the middle school choir and refining her craft to the point where she could write her own songs and decide her own artistic trajectory. And by the time she says 16 years old, maybe she does take that leap to become a pop star. But by preemptively turning her career into his own, he maintains total control over her talent as well as her narrative. It doesn't matter what Miley goes on to do later in her career, because the foundation, the white-hot peak of her oversaturation and media dominance, will always be tied to him. For Christ's sake, half of her songs are about how great having a secret identity is. By having her repeat these platitudes in the form of catchy melodies, he's literally reinforcing to her subconscious that this is what she wants. And what makes it even more obvious that this double life is an implanted desire is how she eventually writes about it herself. In season 3, it's implied that Miley begins writing some of her own songs, and it's jarring to see just how starkly different the narrative becomes once she's voicing her own truth. The songs from her third album are no longer about how glamorous and incredible her double life is. They focus on how difficult it is, how this personality crisis is starting to take over her mental stability as a whole. On songs like Mixed Up, she even outright wishes that her secret never existed. I hope that I'm dreaming because I'm sick of this feeling. I'm mixed up. Somebody help me. Robbie Ray literally uses her early music as a vessel to communicate the mentality he wants her to have because he knows it's not truly her ideal. He needs to convince her that things as they presently are exactly as they should be, with him in the driver's seat of her identity. By essentially turning Hannah into an external privilege that Miley gets to put on if she's been a good kid, he's quietly established that her career isn't even real. The person she becomes when she walks on stage is not actually her, it's a conditional gift her father has given her. That's the reason why he holds it over her head so much. He will often threaten to not let her do a concert or event, directly threatening to stagnate her career because she wasn't a good girl. In the movie, he even proposes the idea of not letting her be Hannah anymore, period, unless she starts acting more accordingly. He literally tricks her into thinking she's flying to New York for an award show and holds Hannah hostage as he traps Miley in Tennessee, with the looming threat of her entire career being ripped out from underneath her if she doesn't comply with what he wants her to do. And what's more is, she really can't say anything because legally, He owns Hannah Montana. Miley literally does not have the publishing rights to these songs to go on stage and sing them without his consent. He's taken the X factor within her and removed it from her, to the point that she feels trapped by it. This dynamic is precisely why Miley goes to such preposterous lengths over seemingly banal issues. Every time she concocts a frivolous lie so she doesn't get caught breaking the rules or sneaking off with her friends, or she tries to control a mildly embarrassing image of her from getting leaked to the press, or when she tries to manipulate an unknowing authority figure into doing something that she wants. She's subconsciously trying to reaffirm her own agency. She wants to believe that she has control over her own life because she knows deep down that she doesn't. Her abstractly vague awareness that she is the victim of this Panopticon designed for her by her father is something she can't fully comprehend or put into words. So likewise, she projects her frustration onto every other aspect of her life. This is where Miley's victim complex finds its roots. Miley is constantly perceiving herself as the wronged innocent in nearly every situation she finds herself in, even when somebody else is at the barrel of the true ordeal. Take, for example, when she accidentally bumps her choreographer Tina out of a window, causing this poor woman to need a full-body cast and be bedridden for months. We hardly see Miley showing much in the way of remorse for this. Instead, the episode focuses on how hard it is for Miley to find a new choreographer, and when she does find one, he's too mean. So what does Miley do? Of course, she intrudes upon Tina's hospital room and attempts to kidnap her so she can come back and finish the job.
Every morning I break my legs. And every afternoon I break my arms.
Regardless of the fact that, if anything, Miley is the inadvertent antagonist here, the episode frames this as her struggle. She's the one facing adversity because her new choreographer is kind of a dick, and firing him would be inconvenient because he gets along with her dad and the award show is in 2 weeks. It's obvious on many different occasions that Miley is a self-centered and extremely biased narrator. And Miley's biased memory is all we have to go off of because the entire show is being conducted by her own internal hard drive. Now, I'm not saying that the events she's recalling are fake, they're just exaggerated. The foundational element of whatever is presently happening and being shown on screen is real, but between the zany irregularities, the occasional defiance of physics, as well as the sheer audacity of the characters to sometimes just say the quiet parts out loud,
which is why it may look familiar, but we've never met. Not even at school or anything.
You're not watching real-time footage of these interactions. You're watching the film adaptation of her diary when she retells it to herself at the end of the night. The studio audience you hear in the background of the show is literally Miley's internal coping mechanism.
Come on, can we just skip to the part where, you forgive me and we hug and the imaginary audience in my head goes, aww. Just like in my head.
And because this entire show is told from the point of view of a teenage girl with a projected victim complex, every scene is framed to make her look as unculpable as possible. The only occasions in which we see Miley portrayed as the bad guy are when she actually learns her lesson at the end of the episode. Oftentimes, Miley is being an aggressor, but since it's never roped into the overall moral lesson she earns at the end of the day, it's never acknowledged as a moral failing. We only get to see her held accountable for her actions when she decides to hold herself accountable. The entire show is essentially a documentary of her life filtered through a lens of her own delusion. She perceives her entire life as a TV show because it figuratively and literally is. It's almost like The Truman Show if Truman Burbank was vaguely aware that he was being watched the entire time from an alternate dimension. Her entire life is a performance. The fundamental concept of Miley Stewart being a normal girl is in of itself a show she's putting on. Because she's not a normal girl. She's Hannah Montana. By splitting her ego in half, she isn't protecting the real person beneath the wig. She's just marketing a completely different character in a completely different way. She's still working for a form of payment. It's just that instead of the currency being, say, profit from concert tickets, now the currency is being treated like a regular human by society. Ironically, the double life only ever seems to make Miley's life more complex than it would be if she just simply learned to exist as a famous person. At least then she wouldn't be constantly living with the existential perpetual paranoia that her secret could literally be discovered at any moment. Even when it's not the direct matter at hand, which more often than not, it is, it's still at the back of her mind, influencing every decision she makes throughout the day. Every word she says must be calculated, and every step she takes must be walked on eggshells. And the only people she can truly be herself around are the people who know the truth already. She can only fully be properly known as a living, breathing human by people who know both versions of her as one entity. There's people who have met both Miley and Hannah who still can't truly perceive her singular existence because they don't know they're talking to the same person. Johnny has no clue that the girl he's passively acknowledging at school is the same one he's fawning over when she puts on a wig. Josh doesn't know he just professed to the girl he's dating that he hates her music. Amber and Ashley have no idea they're bullying Hannah Montana. If they did, their heads would combust. Robbie Ray understands how important this aspect of her social life is, and that's why he's very vigilant as to how involved any person who does know the secret can be with Miley's life. One of the first instances we see of Robbie Ray limiting Miley's contact with the people who truly know her is the quiet dismissal of Roxy Roker. Roxy was Miley's security guard, and she sort of helped build Miley's career from the ground up. She's literally the person who picked out the Hannah wig. Roxy almost exists as sort of a maternal figure in the first season of the show. Other than Robbie Ray, Roxy is really the only adult in close proximity to Miley who knows the secret, and thereby she wields a lot of influence over her. She's less of a security guard as much as she is an overprotective guardian. At first, Miley's dad doesn't seem to care because she's not exactly stepping on his toes. In fact, Roxy seems to embrace a sort of helicopter style of parenting that jives well with Robbie Ray's calculated curation. If anything, he sees her as an asset to his mission, but that all changes in the season 2 episode, I Want You to Want Me to Go to Florida. When Robbie Ray throws out his back, he demands that Miley opt out of a charity concert in Florida because he won't be able to go with her. Robbie Ray acts like Miley is being a complete brat here, but the thing is, she has a point. After all, this isn't just any concert, this is an already promoted charity event where Miley is being plotted against her biggest business rival. Michaela, a new teen pop diva on the scene who has appointed Hannah as her arch nemesis, is quite literally threatening to steal a cohort of her fans, and honestly, it's not a far-fetched idea. Just imagine Miley pulling out of a charity concert last minute as Michaela's team works with the press to frame it as Hannah Montana tucking her tail between her legs. This would be a PR nightmare, being framed as the selfish diva who let the homeless starve because her ego was threatened. This would be objectively terrible for her career, yet Miley is treated like a spoiled, rotten child for caring. In one of her most fierce acts of defiance in the entire series, Miley decides to sneak off with Roxy, and her dad absolutely loses his shit. He seems about ready to disown her as a daughter until Jackson talks some sense into him. He ends up letting Miley go, not because he wants to, but because he realizes that pressing too hard right now will only drive her further away. It's just absurd when you really think about it. This man surmises that his 15-year-old daughter is ready to be the biggest name in music, yet she's not apparently mature enough to take on any sort of internal responsibility over said career. For Christ's sake, he writes a song called Ready, Set, Don't Go. That is an absolutely batshit title for a song written by a guy who pushed his daughter into the music industry. Even though Roxy wasn't in on the lie, we never see Miley and Roxy together again after this episode, and while it's possible that Roxy decided to quit by her own volition, it's unlikely. Even if Roxy was upset with Miley for lying to her, she likely wouldn't have been inclined to leave unless Robbie Ray was at least indirectly influencing the decision. We know Miley is desperate to keep Roxy as a bodyguard, considering she once ate dog food to keep her, and if Roxy was genuinely that angry at Miley, she likely wouldn't have accompanied her on the rest of the trip. Well, I don't think Robbie Ray outright fired Roxy. He definitely had an influence on her departure. It's likely a conversation happened behind closed doors that we, the audience, don't even see because Miley doesn't know what happened. Robbie Ray likely decides that Roxy needs to be removed from Miley's life, not because Roxy did anything wrong, but because in this moment, Miley figured out how to use Roxy as a tool to claim agency, and a tool she can use to potentially get away from him is a tool that she cannot have access to. Once Roxy is out of the picture, he's now the only adult Miley has. But that still doesn't mean that his influence is unchallenged. Robbie Ray's impact naturally wanes as Miley gets older regardless. However, this doesn't necessarily mean that Miley gains autonomy. His influence over her arguably just gets spiritually transferred to a certain dysfunctional couple. At the very beginning of the series, the only people who know Miley's secrets are members of her family. Obviously her dad and brother, but also her slightly removed family, like her Uncle Earl, her Mama, her cousin Luann, unfortunately, and her Aunt Dolly. Perhaps the only non-blood exception is Roxy. At the start of the first episode, she hasn't even told her best friend Lily. It's almost like Miley inherently understands that revealing her secret to a peer is far riskier. After all, a systematically connected family member is easier to keep on a leash and hold to task if they step out of line. But another teenager who could change their priorities at any moment is unpredictable, even if they are a close friend. By the end of the second episode, Miley's secret has been exposed to not just one, but two of her friends from school. Both Lilly Truscott and Oliver Okins spend the entirety of the series aware as well as a part of Miley's double life. But a dynamic that is often overlooked within this trio is that neither Lilly nor Oliver were really invited into it. They forced their way into the inner workings of her Panopticon by sheer will. Lilly discovers the secret by literally breaking into Miley's dressing room after a concert. She slithers in through a window and she violates unthinkable boundaries considering Hannah Montana is a global superstar, but Miley is hesitant to actually enforce security upon her because, after all, Lilly is her best friend. After noticing several very strange coincidences and finally grabbing Miley's arm to investigate her bracelet, Lilly finally puts two and two together. At first, she's irrationally upset at Miley for not telling her, as if keeping the secret was a personal slight against her, and even when she gets over herself, she immediately skips asking what she can do for Miley and starts thinking about what Hannah can do for her. When Miley graciously allows Lilly into her closet, Lilly audaciously proposes that Miley is going to tell her secret so that both of them can be popular at school, effectively proving Miley's point in validating her hesitancy to tell Lilly about the secret in the first place. The entitlement of Lilly here is absolutely staggering. She doesn't even bother to ask if Miley would want to reveal her secret. She just immediately jumps to, "Yep, we're telling everyone." Lilly then gets upset at Miley for not accepting her advances, and she storms out of the Stewart residence. She comes back later with a decent enough apology, which Miley obviously accepts because she loves her, but it doesn't change the fact that Lilly really showed her true colors here. In real time, we saw Lilly dehumanize Miley. She wasn't looking at Miley as her friend in this moment, she saw her as a meal ticket. And while over time Lilly certainly figures out how to make her entitlement more palatable and less obvious to Miley, it never quite goes away. Anything, it insidiously grows into something else just as toxic. There's always an unspoken dynamic between the two of them. Even though Lilly is the one leeching the benefits off of Miley's fame, Lilly is also the one who actually has more power over Miley. If their friendship were to ever actually hit a point of no return, Lilly now has about the biggest trump card over Miley imaginable. And especially in Miley's paranoid brain where every move she makes is tailored around keeping her secret as intact as possible, she can't risk that level of potential exposure. Even if she didn't want to, she would have to constantly keep Lilly at bay, especially after seeing how enthusiastically ready Lilly was to blow up her secret just moments after learning it. She has to stay Lilly's friend regardless of what Lilly does, because not being her friend would make her an uncontrollable liability. She needs to keep Lilly contained as to exactly what Lilly remains as for the rest of the series. A mitigated liability. Now, this isn't at all to say that there's not a genuine sisterhood between the two of them. Miley and Lilly really do love each other, and their connection only grows stronger as the series progresses. Arguably a little bit too strong, some would say outright codependent, we'll get to that in just a moment. But especially in the first couple of seasons, Lilly frivolously treats Miley and her fame like a lottery she won in a scratch-off. She creates her own alter ego, Lola Luftnagel, sporting ridiculous neon wigs and overdressing so egregiously you have to imagine she's trying to upstage Hannah. She doesn't even bother trying to behave herself when she's invited into Miley's celebrity orbit. During one of her first stints back backstage after a concert, Lilly completely embarrasses Miley by sticking her tongue in the chocolate fountain. Then she proceeds to run around with her face covered in said chocolate while she spits on people. She then chases Gwen Stefani into the bathroom and asks her to sign her protective toilet seat cover. The next morning, we see her drink directly out of the Stewart family's milk carton. Disgusting. And when Miley gets invited to Kelly Clarkson's birthday party, Lilly decides to just invite herself. We also find Lilly outright desperate to see Miley embarrass herself several episodes later. When Lilly loses her contacts and has to wear her glasses to a skateboarding tournament, she gets insecure about how she looks with them on. When Miley tries to give her a pep talk saying that it doesn't matter, Lilly demands that Miley prove it when a billboard of Hannah with a giant zit photoshopped on her forehead is about to be unveiled to the public. As if Lilly having to wear prescribed glasses to a single event is in any way comparable to Miley enduring potentially hundreds of thousands of fans seeing a giant advert featuring her face with a fake zit. Lilly literally stops by the unveiling, risking being late to her skate tournament just to see this billboard.
What kind of friend would I be if I didn't come to support you after all you did for me? When they pull that cover off and expose that big zit, I'm gonna be right here for you.
But Lilly's sheer audacity and entitlement is really on display in no episode more prominently than Season 2's Cuffs Will Keep Us Together. During a game of kickball where Lilly is one of the team captains, she picks every other classmate before Miley to be on her team. Already aware that Miley is extremely insecure about how she always gets picked last, and if the wound already didn't have enough salt in it, Lilly ends up picking Sarah instead of Miley at the end, forcing Miley to play on the opposing team that hates her guts.
I just wish one time some miracle would happen and I wouldn't get picked last. I pick Sarah.
Well, strategically, this is probably a pretty good idea considering Miley sucks ass at kickball. Miley still understandably gets her feelings hurt. When Lilly shows up backstage at a Hannah concert later that night uninvited, Miley is still upset and refuses to let Lilly ride in her limousine, which pisses her off deeply because at this point Lilly is neck deep in her access to Miley's assets. In this episode, we even see Lilly blatantly body shame Miley.
I want a booty. Good. You could use one.
And when Oliver handcuffs them together, we'll get to that cretin in just a moment, Lilly has to be on stage with Miley as she accepts her booty award. Miley is forced to rattle off a teleprompter speech written by her father, of course, where she essentially apologizes to Lilly, even though Lilly is the person who is dead wrong. All the while, Lilly is still being a complete bitch to Miley, attempting to embarrass her on stage by masquerading as her right hand.
I'm gonna tell you how I truly feel. Makes me think about real contact.
In many scenarios, she is forcing Miley to embarrass herself to placate her own ego. Lilly really doesn't respect Miley's career in a lot of ways. While she thinks it's cool to have a celebrity best friend, she doesn't carry a ton of respect for the amount of work it takes for Miley to actually be Hannah Montana. Lilly hates feeling like she's less than Miley, and she often gets upset with Miley for doing anything that reminds her of her own inferiority complex, even when Miley thinks she's doing something good. Take, for example, when she pays for Lily's DC trip. Lilly wants to prove that she can earn the money herself to go, even though she can't, and when Miley realizes they're running out of time, she concocts a scheme to make Lilly think she earned the money on her own. This makes Lilly completely lash out at Miley because she thinks Miley is impeding on her life and her future career. This complex is extremely hypocritical. She feels entitled to Hannah Montana's perks when they benefit her ego and don't disrupt her internal monologue, but when push comes to shove, she wants to feel completely independent and forbids Miley from trying to help her in any way. And predictably so, every time Lilly is concerned about something of this nature, Miley tries to outsmart her by coming up with a scheme or a lie to keep Lilly blissfully ignorant. It creates a toxic feedback loop. Miley is constantly constantly lying to Lilly to keep the peace, and Lilly is constantly manipulating Miley with the truth. It's made very clear throughout many interactions that Lilly doesn't see Miley's secret as Miley's secret, she sees it as their secret. She sees Hannah's fame as their fame, and thereby Miley's access as her access as well. But Lily's personal life and aspirations, that's all hers, and Miley is intrusive for even attempting to get remotely involved. A little further into the series, you get the feeling that Lilly actually learns to love the fact that Miley's identity is a secret, because Miley is easier to take advantage of if no one else knows. She feels like she should be able to treat Miley any way she wants, because she has been let into her world already. But that's the kicker. She was never let in. She quite literally broke into Miley's hideout, tore off her mask, and then appropriated it for herself. As much as Miley has made peace with the fact that Lilly knows the secret, it most definitely would even say that she's happier because of it, it will never change the fact that she simply wasn't ready to show her cards when her hand was forced. Miley has had to convince herself that what is happening here is normal, that this friendship is completely healthy, as if Lilly blatantly violating her privacy was a noble act that she should be grateful for. But as flawed as Lilly is, what I can give her is that she actually tries to be a good friend to Miley most of the time. She's often Miley's emotional anchor, and she genuinely sticks by Miley's side and wants the best for her, or at the very least, what she thinks is the best for her. And that's a whole lot more than I can say about the skeevy, helmet-headed psychopath that Lilly eventually starts locking lips with.
Whoa, whoa.
At first glance, Oliver Oaken comes across as the goofy and well-intentioned third wheel of Miley and Lily's duo, but in reality, he is an energy vampire who is quietly preying on Miley's downfall. Just think about how Oliver finds out about the secret in the first place. Miley doesn't tell him because she wants to. She tells him because he's literally harassing her alter ego, and giving up her secret is her last-ditch attempt at making him leave her alone. At least in the case of Lilly, Miley was already kind of mowing over the idea of telling her, whereas it's never even implied that Miley wanted Oliver to know her secret in the first place. They really aren't that close, at least not nearly in the way that she is with Lilly, and not even in the way that Oliver is with Lilly. As a trio, Lilly stands firmly in the middle of Miley and Oliver. If we objectively look at what Oliver is doing to the person he thinks is Hannah Montana in episode 2, it is literal stalking. He is latching onto her limo and following her everywhere. He even goes so far as to sneak into her tour bus so he can travel with her.
I'll wait for you forever.
Oh, I never said that!
Forever! Do you hear me, Hannah Montana? Forever!
He's constantly proclaiming his love for her, promising that they will be together one day. This isn't just a run-of-the-mill celebrity crush. Oliver is actively threatening his own safety as well as Hannah Montana's by insistently trailing her every move and not taking no for an answer. Miley pulls every stop she possibly can before she resorts to telling her secret as she attempts to make Oliver stop stalking her. Once she's leaned into his biggest phobia of gum chewing in an attempt to give him the ick, and he's still hung up on her, she finally tells him the truth, hoping that the realization he's been stalking Miley this whole time will make him lay off. Which it kind of does. Of course he's no longer overtly pining after her, but he certainly doesn't leave Hannah Montana alone. Now that he knows the secret, he similarly to Lilly demands access to her amenities. In fact, there's an entire episode where he basically guilt trips Miley into letting him backstage when she clearly doesn't really want him there. If Lilly snuck behind the curtain of Hannah Montana before Miley was ready to show her, Oliver barged into the theater and started demanding a part in the production without even buying a ticket. But just like in the case of Lilly, Miley's ability to stand up to Oliver is very limited because he shares the same trump card. And unlike Lily's flawed but authentic loyalty to Miley, Oliver is just knowingly an outright shitty friend much of the time. When Amber and Ashley publish a ranking of every kid in their class from most to least cool, Oliver starts actively disassociating with Miley and Lily in public because he's slightly higher on the list than them, and they're embarrassing him.
Okay, see you later.
Where are you going?
Look, I finally cracked the top 100, and there's no way I'm talking to people from the last page. Stop begging. I'll see you after dark.
When it comes to Lily, and especially Oliver, Miley seems to just let stuff like this completely roll off her back. It's like she sees someone knowing her secret as a license to belittle her. And because the entire show is once again portrayed through Miley's biased lens, Lily and Oliver are often framed as her closest allies and well-meaning sidekicks who sometimes get into scuffles with her, as opposed to what they functionally are. Lily is an emotional and material parasite who eventually turns into a codependent shell of her former self, and Oliver goes from being a flimsy friend early on to what can really only be described as an actual saboteur in season 3. Calling him a monitoring spirit is actually an understatement. Oliver's begrudging irritation towards Miley's talent is already a quiet undercurrent through the first couple of seasons. For example, in Oh Say Can You Remember the Words, he makes Miley feel like a complete villain for not wanting to put up with his blatant incompetence and lack of effort during a theater assignment. His guilt trip even leads to her messing up the national anthem when she's doing a live broadcast that night because she's so distracted by the ordeal. But in this episode, he at least opts to help her in the end.
Hold on tight. The dream. You never know.
This shows a level of general respect for Miley in her career that later completely evaporates. His resentment really comes to a head in the season 3 episode You Gotta Lose This Job, when Miley and Oliver both have respectively big auditions the same day. For Miley, this entails a starring role in a blockbuster motion picture, and for Oliver, it entails auditioning for a school dance. Oliver ends up not getting the gig, likely because his singing is merely competent and the song itself is just unlistenably bad. I'm not exactly sure how impressed he thought Mr. Meadows would be by a course with such innovative lyricism as throw your hands, throw your hands, throw your hands, throw your hands up, whoa whoa, 'cause you can't, 'cause you can't, 'cause you can't, 'cause you can't stop, whoa whoa. And look, I'm not trying to knock Mitchell Musso's vocal capabilities here. He's certainly the second best singer of the Musso brothers, and hey, even remains a staple in my playlist to this day. But this extremely ham-fisted rebrand Disney attempted circa 2009 to turn him into a teen pop heartthrob a la Jesse McCartney and the Joe Bros just did not translate. He meets this weird middle point between a derpy gamer and your catfish MySpace boyfriend. It kind of reminds me of when Shane Dawson casted himself as the hot, charismatic jock in his own movie. Okay, maybe that's a little bit too disrespectful. But I digress. When Oliver loses out on this audition, he begins lamenting his frustration with the fact that Miley gets everything she wants. He even verbatim proposes that he can't be friends with her anymore so long as she continues to be successful.
Oliver, you're acting like you don't even want to be my friend anymore. This is crazy.
I don't know. I gotta go.
Mind you, Miley hasn't even officially gotten this role yet. He literally refuses to speak to her for multiple days because he's so frustrated by the sheer possibility of her getting a part in a movie. And during this entire pity party he throws for himself, at no point does he look inward and think, perhaps I should try harder next time and maybe sing a song that doesn't suck deflated ass. At no point does he even acknowledge the anomaly that is Miley's talent. He simply says,
You know, Miley, let's face it. You get everything you go after. Face it, you'll get the next one, and the next one after that. And I'm not sure I can be around that anymore.
He doesn't bring up the fact that Miley is an incomparatively better singer than him. He doesn't even bring up how hard she works. He attempts to make her feel like her success is merely a privilege that isn't afforded to him because of hers, as if her success is somehow directly fueled by the non-existence of his own. He makes Miley feel so guilty about this that she actively tries to get dropped from the movie. She pours ice water down Rob Reiner's shirt, rest in peace, just so she can lose out on this role and make Oliver feel a little bit less bad about himself. And when Oliver discovers that Miley blew the audition for him, his response is the most telling part of this entire fiasco. A real friend who was truly just projecting and still cared about your general well-being would tell you that this was an unnecessary thing to do. If Oliver genuinely wanted the best for Miley, he would have said something at least to the degree of, hey, you shouldn't do that for me. But no, Oliver thanks her. He's genuinely stoked by the fact that she potentially just nuked her own film career solely to placate his ego. In fact, it's likely that if Lilly didn't announce that Miley did this for him, he would have just walked out of her house and stopped being her friend for the foreseeable future. Oliver knows exactly what he's doing here. He's testing the limitations of his own influence over her and gleefully observing just how far it goes. He's delivering Miley a very direct message. You need to shrink yourself in order to keep me in your life. Oliver now has living proof that Miley will do anything to keep him around because she's trauma bonded to the people who know her secret. They have to stay close to her because A, they're the only people who truly know her, and B, she fears how her secret can be weaponized when she's no longer on good terms with one of its keepers. This marks the beginning of an era where Oliver is shamelessly trying to screw up Miley's trajectory. Not too long after this episode, we see Oliver go to new lengths in order to consolidate power over her, and his most drastic strategies come about when he starts dating Lilly. This relationship seems to come out of virtually nowhere, as Oliver and Lily's dynamic prior to this season 3 episode seemed strictly platonic, even more so than Oliver and Miley's did, but it does have its roots. It's mentioned at one point that Lilly developed a crush on Oliver back in elementary school, and considering how easy it was for her to fall into him here, it's likely that those feelings never entirely went away. They merely were tucked away because Oliver was not interested. Oliver spent the first couple of seasons pining after pretty much every girl on Earth except for Lilly, so this sudden shift to him believing she's the love of his life comes across as more jarring than it does romantic. And look, I'm not saying that Oliver doesn't love Lilly, but I am saying that he likely isn't in love with her. I mean, if you really look at the episodes where they are an item, he's usually a pretty terrible boyfriend to her. While she's no perfect angel herself, any transgression she makes against him is repeated back to her tenfold and then some. In the first episode featuring them as an official couple, they get into a giant argument over what the first song they danced to was, as well as where they went on their first date. While this is framed in the end as a mutually petty grievance, there really is something sinister going on here if you pay attention. If you rewatch the scene where they start arguing, it is very clear that Oliver is intentionally gaslighting her. He single-handedly turns the initial argument over which song was playing into an argument over which band is better. He starts belittling her for preferring Radiohead to Coldplay, which mind-boggling stance to take. If anything, I would expect the Radiohead stan to be the elitist music snob here, but once again, I digress.
So seriously, you think Radiohead is better than Coldplay?
I cannot believe you don't remember our first date.
And I can't believe you think Radiohead is better than Coldplay.
Okay, what are
He then flips it around on her, as if she's the one who insulted his music taste.
Well, excuse me for having an opinion.
But that's not what Lilly was upset about, and she literally didn't do that. Lilly didn't have a problem with him saying that he likes Coldplay. She had a problem with him not remembering what the song their first dance was to when it just happened like a week ago. He completely changes the prompt of the argument mid-argument and then immediately storms off so that she feels culpable after accusing her of doing the thing that he did. It honestly feels like he's the one intentionally lying here for some reason. Throughout the rest of the season, we see him treat Lilly like an afterthought most of the time. He forgets their 100-day anniversary, which may sound trivial, but Lilly expressed that she was genuinely excited for this, and when he forgets, he mocks her for caring about it in the first place. He calls out sick on her birthday, which just feels all too convenient. How do you call out from your girlfriend's birthday like it's a job? You can't even, sit on Skype with her or something? And although they both still occasionally fantasize about other people, Oliver will oftentimes outright theorize about cheating on her right in front of her. And based off of his actions, you start to believe he probably would do so if given the chance.
I caught my boyfriend talking to another girl. What do I do?
Back off. Give the guy a little bit of space. We are men, so we are hunters. It's what we do. But I'm sure Miley has a different opinion on this one.
You think?
So worried that you'd freak out thinking I was one of those guys who goes on the road promising not to cheat, but then, caves after the first cute girl who, Well, let's be honest, just after the first cute girl.
Over the course of season 3, Oliver emotionally breaks Lily down to a point that completely changes not just her character, but the dynamic between the entire trinity. At first, it felt more like Lily and Oliver building a coalition against Miley. The episode in which they come together to make Miley feel self-conscious about not having a boyfriend is preposterously infantilizing. But sooner than later, it seems like he's just continuously putting Lily through increasingly ridiculous humiliation rituals to test how deep her allegiance to him really is. At one point, Miley ends up unconscious in a hospital room after a ski incident, and since Oliver thinks she can't hear him, he bizarrely decides to grab her hand and intimately profess his love for her.
I love you.
When Lily finds out about this, she's obviously devastated, but all is well when Oliver proclaims that he was just practicing for when he inevitably says I love you to Lily.
You said that you loved me.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did. She heard you.
She heard. Oh. No, I wasn't saying it to Miley. I was practicing to say it to you. It's not easy saying I love you if you've never said it to a girl before.
And while he may have been able to easily convince Lily with this sorry-ass excuse, I don't buy it for a goddamn second. Mainly because he's just blatantly lying when he says he's never said I love you to a girl before. Because Oliver has said I love you to a girl before, multiple times. And guess which girl he said it to?
Like me now.
I still love you.
The moment you realize that Oliver has a twisted obsession with Miley that manifests itself as both unrequited love and resentment simultaneously, his entire character arc starts to make sense. It's the reason why he gets weirdly competitive with Miley's romantic interests. It's the reason why he demands Miley dull her shine for him. If he can't be with Miley, he'll be with the girl closest to Miley, and perhaps even more disturbingly, if he can't be with Miley, he will simply become Miley. And that's what brings us to the part of the series where Oliver effectively attempts a destiny swap. The episode Judge Me Tender is perhaps the most diabolical instance of Oliver being a complete and utter ekapraxia case. Here we see Oliver audition for America's Top Talent, specifically on the week where Hannah Montana is the guest judge, and you just know he did this on purpose. He could have picked any other reality singing competition, or even the same one on a different week where Miley wasn't on the panel, but he didn't because he wanted Miley to be front and center. He needed Miley to bear witness to his greatness for once. Better yet, he wants her in a position where she has to open the gate for him. When you combine this with the fact that he just a few episodes ago encouraged her to turn down a movie role for him, you see exactly what he's doing. He's actively pressuring Miley to derail her own career, all the while trying to step into her world by singing music that is extremely derivative of her own. Once he makes it onto the show, random girls at school start throwing themselves at him, and he is basking in the attention right in front of Lily. He even numerically categorizes the babes in his posse from 1 to however the fuck many. He spends the entire episode running around with and flirting with these girls as he literally ignores Lily for a couple weeks.
Hey, babe. Fans want to take pictures of me by the ocean, so, I'll call you. To the beach!
Miley, what am I gonna do?
I find it extremely difficult to imagine he had no idea what he was doing here. He clearly sees Lily distressed about the fact that he's basically cheating on her right in front of her, and he only seems to show any remorse when he realizes that Miley is upset with him too. I genuinely think he kinda uses Lily as a tool to neutralize Miley from another angle. Lily is the person who has the most direct influence over Miley at this point, and by essentially wrapping Lily around his finger, he wields unthinkable second-hand influence over Miley. Just look at how this episode ends. Miley is encouraging Lily to dump Oliver, an instance of her being a genuinely good friend because Lily absolutely should dump Oliver because he's treating her like shit. But Lily is so pragmatized that all Oliver has to do is show up, and she immediately runs into his arms. Side note, this cannot be the same girl who did this to her cheating ex-boyfriend just a couple years prior. Miley at this point is pissed off enough at Oliver that she's finally ready to risk an actual falling out with him, But because Lilly just automatically forgives him, Miley follows in succession. He can violate even more boundaries with Miley now because Lilly will always be there to veto her reaction and back him up. It's only fitting that season 3 ends with Oliver leaving to go on tour while Miley sacrifices her wish to go back to Tennessee so she can stay in Malibu and keep Lilly company. Oliver has almost single-handedly curated a system where he freely pursues his own aspirations, often using Miley's career as a direct mood board, as Miley constantly questions whether her own aspirations are too selfish to fulfill. This sets the entire tone for Season 4, where Oliver is completely absent as he follows his dreams, all the while Miley ponders whether or not she should stagnate her own career to benefit the people around her. But before we finally divulge into the psychological warfare inflicted upon Miley in Hannah Montana Forever, there's one more looming piece of context that I'm not sure I've ever seen discussed as thoroughly as it probably should be. Before we go any further, I just have to make one thing abundantly clear. I will always be Team Jake. I'm sure this may be my most controversial take in this entire video, but I will walk back absolutely nothing. Not only was Jake Ryan the best romantic interest in all of Hannah Montana, in some ways he was the only love interest. Of all the boys that Miley dated or even showed any sort of attraction to, Jake Ryan is kind of the only one that actually mattered in a narrative sense. There are several guys who we see who only exist in the Hannah Montana universe for 1 or 2 episodes max and are never mentioned again afterwards. Jake Ryan, however, appears in every season of Hannah Montana, and with the exception of Season 4, he is in at least 3 episodes of each season. To really put it in perspective, of the 101 total episodes, Jake Ryan appears in 12 of them. That is well over 10% of the entire show. And note that it's not just that Jake appears in these episodes. Whenever Jake Ryan is in an episode, he is the episode. Hell, a handful of the episodes about him are literally named after him. Unlike other recurring characters who are often used as mere plot devices, when he enters the Hannah Montana universe, it completely orbits around him. He's arguably the only character in the entire show that can compete with Hannah Montana's star power, especially in the earlier seasons. And tragically, from all of the conversation that I've perused on the internet about him, it seems that to this day, Jake Ryan is a deeply misunderstood character. Sure, several criticisms of Jake Ryan do have grounding. He can be very egotistical, self-centered, and sometimes a bit temperamental. But here's the thing. Any misdeed you're harshly judging Jake Ryan for could easily be applied to Miley herself. That's why Jake is such a perfect foil to Miley. He was a mirror, an amalgamation of many things that she loves and resents about herself. That's why the initial dynamic between them doesn't immediately start out as one of romance. It begins as envy. Miley gets so fed up with the special treatment Jake gets for being a celebrity that she almost blows her secret to a reporter. The entire first episode and a half that Jake appears in, she doesn't even express attraction to him. She's just pissed off by his existence. From Miley's perspective, Jake is able to enjoy the side of fame that she sacrificed for anonymity, and seeing the perks of what she's actively rejecting waved in front of her like this is overwhelming as well as temptatious. She wants to eat pancakes in class and get a quadruple door locker and be seen as cool merely by default. And while Miley does decide to back out at the last second to continue living her humble, normal life, let's not act like Miley isn't just as much of an egotistical diva as Jake Ryan. When she's dressed up as Hannah, she expects all the same kind of shit. People to give her free stuff, people to bend to her will simply because she is who she is. Just because she decides when and when not to weaponize it doesn't mean she doesn't revel in it all the same. The only real difference is that unlike Miley, Jake can't turn it off. Jake's never been able to turn it off. Jake wasn't handed a mask and a recording contract at the age of 12 by his already famous father. In fact, Jake had no say in whether or not he became famous at all. He was pushed into showbiz as a literal baby doing diaper ads.
Do this whole normal thing? I mean, I've been famous since I was the face of Wonder Diapers.
Jake Ryan cannot cognitively remember anything that happened in a world where he wasn't already famous. When he says he's thirsty in public and people just start offering him their drinks, that's not an ego trip. That's literally just what he's been conditioned to do when he's thirsty his entire life.
Normal people get their own water.
Really?
At the age of 14, he is already casually familiar with things like PR relationships and media management. This is his job, and his job is his entire life. That's why he struggles so much to adapt to Miley's lifestyle when he tries to be normal with her. He creates an outlandish character named Milo and treats it like method acting because that's all he knows how to do. The concepts of waiting in a line or privacy in a movie theater, these are completely foreign to him. It's his second nature to be the center of attention. He's not making himself it, he simply is it. As you see more of Jake's personality unfold into weirder and weirder patterns, you realize just how much of this enforced child star status has deeply impacted his psyche. He will often be quoting his own movies or TV shows in everyday life.
Maybe I'm not normal on the outside, but inside beats the heart of a kid just like you.
That's from Team Bigfoot.
His work is all he wants to talk about half the time because it's all he's ever known. These script excerpts are practically baked into the foundation of his being because he grew up having to memorize them every night. And while Jake is often framed as annoying for this, even by Miley herself at one point, is Miley really all that different? She's constantly talking about and obsessing over her career. In fact, most of the episodes entirely revolve around it. But it's something we don't fault her for or find grating because, after all, that is her life. It's what drives the plot forward. But because Jake is not the protagonist, his investment in his own life and career is seen as self-indulgence. In fact, he and Miley are so similar that oftentimes when she's criticizing him, it just sounds like she's projecting criticism of herself. She rebukes Jake for misreading social cues and taking a bottle of water from a little girl, yet just some episodes later, we see her snatching a Hannah wig off a little girl's scalp so she can manipulate some underpaid mall employees into giving her free makeup.
You wear this thing too long, it'll give you a head rash. I'm Hannah Montana. I just want to know if I can get some free samples. Wink.
Jake is such a bad guy for wanting to skip to the front of the line, yet we have no shortage of instances of Miley slapping on her weave because she's inconvenienced by having to wait her turn. When she says,
You don't know what a normal guy is.
it's just laughable. Miley, you don't know what a normal girl is. You just pretend to be one. It's no wonder she finds it all so easy to forgive him and just gets back together with him in season 3. It was absurdly hypocritical for her to be upset with his behavior in the first place. Her relationship with Jake is so intricately complex because she simultaneously resents him and deeply loves him for how much he relates to her. She loves him truly in a way that she doesn't really even have the capacity to love other people close to her because they don't give her enough room to do so. Prior to the Crowley Corners reveal in the movie where they all promised to keep her secret, and especially her season 4 televised reveal that ended the secret once and for all, the only peers who really had her tea were 3 specific people: Lilly, Oliver, and Jake. But unlike Lilly and Oliver, and this is very important to note, Jake did not forcibly discover the secret. He did not put Miley in a position where she had to tell him. Miley told Jake her secret because she wanted to.
I'm Hannah Montana.
This is perhaps the only instance of this in the entire series. Miley actually revealing her full identity to someone in a moment of authentic vulnerability because she felt emotionally safe enough to do so. He didn't have to sneak into her dressing room or stalk her in order to access the secret. He simply earned it by being someone she knew she could trust. And honestly, I think this alone is what made Lilly and Oliver turn on Jake. It's no coincidence that right after Miley reveals her secret to him, according to her friends, he suddenly becomes an intolerable monster that she needs to break up with. There's really no other explanation when you observe how they treated Jake before and after this specific event. Contrary to Lilly's claim that she never liked Jake, Lilly spent multiple episodes of season 1 fawning over Jake.
You know, look at me.
I do. All the time. Even when you don't know I am.
And hell, when he comes back in season 2, she was the one begging Miley to give him a second chance.
He's so in your. I mean, come on.
And even Oliver was fond of Jake. He let him take over his DJ set at the school dance, a very coveted type of respect. Lilly and Oliver decide to contextualize this newfound disdain as being disgusted by his egotistical and self-centered behavior, Yet they didn't have a problem with it before. It's not like Jake Ryan just suddenly started being Jake Ryan during this episode. They were entirely familiar with his attitude and behavior prior to this. And not only did they not mind it, they found it actively charming. It's clear that Lilly and Oliver were both jealous and fearful of Jake's influence over Miley. If he could just in a matter of weeks untap a level of emotional security that they still didn't have with her after years of friendship, who's to say that his connection to her couldn't eventually render theirs obsolete? God forbid, Jake even teaches Miley to be less fearful of living authentically as a celebrity, and their power of secrecy is depleted. They knew they had to join together and inflate Miley's fear about Jake to get him out of the picture. They successfully convince Miley to dump him, but Miley is scared that if she does so, he might tell her secret. Likewise, she does exactly what she always does and creates a ridiculous scheme to try and avoid confrontation.
Maybe we should just go inside.
But first I gotta... Oh, yeah.
Miley decides that she's going to make Jake want to break up with her by embarrassing him at his red carpet event, which, once again, makes it really hard to take seriously the criticism that Jake is such an inconsiderate jackass when Miley is doing this during a televised event. Can you even imagine the level of antagonistic framing that would ensue if Jake decided to interfere with Miley's career like this? And what's more is, even after she intentionally embarrasses him on national television, he still won't break up with her. He still wants to make things work because he genuinely cares about her that much. Miley then launches into this spiel about how Jake is so shallow and airheaded and has no idea how to be normal. She is verbally assassinating him here for not figuring out how to perform normalcy adequately enough for her liking in a literal day. What's painfully ironic here is that Miley is accusing Jake of being an egomaniac with a superiority complex, all the while she's using her skewed version of normalcy as her own superiority complex. In her mind, she is morally elevated over him by default because of the fact that she knows how to perform civilian life in a way he can't, because he literally has never had the ability to do so. It's mind-boggling just how much she expects him to be able to adapt to her world, meanwhile she won't even bother to try thinking from the perspective of his for a single moment. This is really where Miley's framing of her own life exposes her as a deeply unreliable narrator. It's not that she's omitting details or necessarily lying to the audience, she just simply is incapable of teaching or learning the right lesson. The people closest to her have groomed her into thinking that this way of thinking is completely rational. In fact, when you think about it, Lilly and Oliver are kind of the direct reason why she got so scared of the prospect of Jake telling her secret and did this entire shenanigan in the first place. It's not really that Jake seems like he would be so uniquely evil as to expose her secret. It's that she knows that if she were to put Lilly or Oliver in a similar position, they might expose her. She's learned to inherently fear the holders of her secret because the two peers who do know it are intrusive wildcards. When she accuses Jake of having the potential to do such a thing to her as her reasoning for ruining his premiere, you can tell that this accusation really hurts him more than anything. As if in this moment he's realizing he let himself get so close to somebody who really doesn't know his heart at all. Jake's choice of words are really important here.
Why didn't you just tell me? Instead of going all woolly mammoth at the premiere.
I was afraid that if I dumped you, you'd get so upset.
Well, if that's the kind of guy you think I am, then maybe I will tell your secret.
If that's the kind of guy you think I am, then maybe I will tell your secret. That's not him threatening her, that's just him observing her objective opinion of him. Miley thinks Jake might be the type of person who would do something that foul to her because almost everyone else close to her potentially is that foul. He loses his temper because he feels attacked and misunderstood, which is why he sends her a rose literally just minutes later with an incredibly beautiful letter attached to it in which he promises that her secret will always be safe with him. Because it always was.
I do wish I was a normal person sometimes. I just don't know how to do that yet. And don't worry, your secret will always be safe with me.
The demonization of Jake Ryan within Miley's inner circle goes from ridiculous to outright slanderous when we get to season 3, the episode He Could Be the One. Suddenly, Jake is being talked about by Lilly and Oliver like he's goddamn Osama bin Laden, referring to him as Heartbreak Jake. By the way they're acting in this episode, you would think he had cheated and stranded her on a highway.
That after everything Jake put you through.
I knew that you would say, you are making the biggest mistake of your life.
And now even Robbie Ray apparently hates Jake.
Now, let's get you away from that miserable punk who broke my daughter's heart.
But if we were to take all this concern at face value, it would immediately implode because it makes no fucking sense. What did Jake do to Miley that was so gutting and heartbreaking? Let's really retrace the timeline of this relationship here. Miley is the person who resented Jake for weeks on end before admitting she liked him. He asked her to the school dance 3 different times and she kept saying no, then changed her mind and decided to crash the dance anyway, even though he had gone with Lilly. Mind you, this is also potentially the most terrible thing Miley has ever done to Lilly, literally trying to steal her date right out from under her just because she knows that he likes her more. Then she tries to make him jealous by dating a 5th grader.
I know. I went on a date with an 11-year-old.
Potentially the worst thing that Jake has done up to this point was kiss her right before he had to leave to go shoot a movie, but this really isn't his fault. I mean, he's a 14-year-old doing his job, and that's not even taking into account the fact that she wasted multiple weeks they could have spent together bullshitting around because she wanted to play games with him. She's the one who decided to dump him after he tried to be normal for her, mind you, after ruining his red carpet on purpose, and bar the punked episode where they get back together, his most recent appearance at this point was in the episode That's What Friends Are For, where Jake attempts to just be friends with Miley, but then she gets so jealous that he's filming a movie where he's gonna kiss Michaela that she essentially tries to sabotage the entire film because she's trying to get Michaela fired.
I have to kiss you. Oh, I guess that's why they call it acting.
Look, I know you're nervous, but it'd really help me if you stopped slamming me.
I gotta fix this. No, I'm not busy. What's going on here?
What are you doing? Turn it off!
Turn it up? Okay.
She deadass strands Michaela out on a balcony and then proceeds to verbally and physically abuse Jake while pretending to be her, hoping that it will lead to Michaela's termination. Up to this point in the series, if anything, Miley has been the lone aggressor in this relationship. All Jake has done, effectively up to this point, is bend over backwards catering to Miley while she does nothing but send mixed signals and treat him like a disposable boy toy. And the thing is, Robbie Ray knows this. He firsthand witnessed his daughter in her attempt to sabotage Jake's movie and even encouraged her to apologize to him afterwards.
I'm not the one you need to apologize to.
I cannot believe what you did.
But now, all of a sudden, he wants to act like Jake is the Antichrist? There's literally no explanation to this other than her friends and her father feeling directly threatened by him. They know he is the only person who could potentially wake her up from this spell they have her under. At the beginning of this episode, we see Miley struggling to get her dad to accept that she's dating Jake again. After she tells him they're back together, he's being a complete bitch about it, acting as if her refraining from telling him for 3 weeks is some irrevocable violation of his trust, and this is where Jesse comes in. Now, the bulk of Jesse's narrative impact doesn't happen until season 4, so for now I'm just gonna stick to what transpires in this episode. Initially, Miley is just using Jesse to try and scare her dad into accepting Jake because Jesse is so obviously worse. Unlike with Jake, Robbie Ray's disdain towards Jesse seems very immediate and completely untethered to Miley, and in a rather uncharacteristic fashion for Robbie Ray, kind of completely justified. He gets on Jesse's case for 2 main reasons. A, because he's always late for practice, which is extremely irritating and inconsiderate regardless of what band you're in, let alone as the guitarist for a global pop sensation with a very limited time window. And B, for just being outright misogynistic.
I'm just not feeling it anymore. I'm sorry.
Okay. Fine.
Okay, that's usually it. Sounds like you go through this quite a bit. Yeah, chicks, huh? Well, better stop. Hey, listen, man, I don't like the fact that you keep showing up late, and I really don't like the way you treat chicks.
Now, I'm just gonna lay this out bluntly here. I find Jesse absolutely insufferable. There are honestly one-and-done romantic interests in this show that I find far more captivating than him, and especially the way he's introduced in this episode. He just bores me to tears and pisses me off at the same time. In fact, I'm surprised by how popular Team Jesse seems to be to this day. I guess the character assassination of Jake Ryan in Season 4 must have really worked, because the girls still go up for Mr. Nonchalant over here. I firmly believe that this is part of the reason why so many Gen Z and millennial women have terrible experiences with dating men. It's because they grew up on media that groomed them into thinking that they should date guys that act like this. Beyond his occasional dickheadery, Jesse is kind of nothing. He is a vacuous amalgamation of like 3 Y2K bad boy stereotypes that have aged about as well as polio. In a lot of ways, he's the anti-Jake. Where Jake is grandiose and romantic in his pursuit of Miley, Jesse is a dud who likely wouldn't be bent out of shape if she literally fucking died. Where Jake is loud about his feelings and wears his heart on his sleeve, Jesse will ask her out for coffee and doesn't really care if she says yes or not because he has a few other girls lined up just in case. Jake Ryan will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars attempting to woo Miley, buy her a literal star, and profess his undying love for her on live television, blowing up his PR relationship and risking his career in the process.
Look at her, draped over him like drapes.
Marissa's a good friend. Truth is, I'm in love with a girl named Miley Stewart.
Mom, you're gonna break it.
I don't care.
Jesse will dump his ex in front of you, tell you he did it because he's into you, then confess that he says this to every girl he wants to link with. But he swears it's different this time, of course. Jesse is a nothing burger with an uncooked potato on the side and a large cup of air with no refills. And if any of you Jesse truthers out there still want the smoke and think he's such a fundamental character, just let me ask you one pivotal question. Can you tell me Jesse's last name? I'll wait. Either one of two things just happened. A, you remained completely silent, or B, you just gave me a wrong answer. You want to know how I know? Because Jesse doesn't have a fucking last name. You heard that right. You can search archives, wiki pages, you can watch all 6 episodes he appears in front to back 100 times over. The final love interest in Hannah Montana was so trite and uninteresting that the writers literally forgot to give him a full legal name. This almost feels intentional. Take, for example, Trey Harris, a boy Miley dates for literally 1 episode in season 2. He disavows his billionaire parents so that he can be with Miley after they disapprove of her. He had a more thoughtful character arc in 20 minutes than Jesse was given during his entire run on this show. Just think of how much his second thought of a half of a name really pales in comparison to that of Jake Ryan. The name Jake Ryan is a brand. It's a lifestyle, a story in 3 syllables. It's not just a name, it's 2 first names. Embedded in with the lore of his first name, Leslie, it leaves the mark of a character who actually had a reason to be created in the first place. Jesse isn't even the first or most interesting romantic interest in the show named Jesse. The writers are literally making fun of you for picking him. Eventually, Miley starts to actually have feelings for Jesse, and there's a whole sequence where she has to choose between the 2 guys. Now, this is where I really have to get on Miley's neck, because rewatching this episode as a grown adult completely shifted the perspective I had as a child. I remember watching the premiere of this episode in 2009 and feeling vaguely sorry for Miley, simply because the show goes so far as to pull out the dead mom card in order to force you to feel bad for her.
The only voice that really matters is the one inside you. And if you listen to your heart, the answer will always come to you.
Thought you said it was easy. Listening to your heart.
So this is the story of a girl where everyone's first impression of her is that she's really innocent. But when you get to actually talking to her, you find out she's kind of got a dirty mind. She got that innocent face, but a dirty little mind.
But I have to say, it's extremely difficult for me to extract any kind of sympathy for the situation she has put herself in here. aside from me just sheerly side-eyeing her on the very principle of lusting over this try-hard fuckboy, she's being an outright terrible girlfriend to Jake. Sorry, honey, I just need a couple of days to decide whether or not I'm gonna dump you for this dirtbag walking venereal disease I've had barely 3 conversations with. She spends half of this episode intentionally incentivizing Jesse, at one point shouting out how badly she wants to kiss him, then immediately trying to gaslight Jake when he walks in.
No idea how much I want to kiss you. Boy, do I want to kiss you.
You wanna what?
I'm just writing a song for you. You have no idea how much I want to kiss you, but Jake, wait.
Can you imagine, once again, the framing if he did this to her? This is baby the absolute most unlikable Miley Stewart is at any point in the series. Just dramatizing a problem of her own making like she's the victim, while she's actively antagonizing her significant other. And listen, when I was 9 years old watching this episode for the first time, I was so fully in on Team Jake that I put my hands together and prayed to God, the actual fucking entity, that Miley would pick him. You heard that correct. I took time out of the divine creator's day to ensure Jake Ryan's victory. Which makes it all the more heartbreaking to say that upon watching this as an adult, I actually kind of wish she didn't pick him. In this episode, Jake is being genuinely such a good boyfriend to Miley. It's clear he's actually grown immensely as a person. Even after he effectively catches her emotionally cheating on him, he's still extremely patient and understanding. He gives her space as well as the benefit of the doubt. Mind you, a level of grace she would not go on to extend to him, but we'll get to that in just a bit. By the end of this episode, I was not asking whether or not Jake deserved Miley. I had become fully certain that Miley didn't deserve Jake. It probably would have been better for everybody in the long term had she just put him out of his misery right then and there. Honestly, his blatant acceptance of her mistreatment here is kind of pathetic. But I can't judge him too harshly because after all, it is a fundamental teenage boy experience to at some point be completely down bad for a girl who doesn't give a flying fuck about your physical or emotional well-being. Funny enough, there is an alternate ending available as a bonus feature on the DVD release in which she does pick Jesse that is actually really well done and emotionally affecting.
He's a lucky guy. I hope he knows that.
Thank you.
Watching Miley say a final and proper goodbye to Jake is heartbreaking but cathartic. It shows the natural conclusion of two people who deeply love each other but simply weren't built to last forever. It's raw, it's gripping, and most jarringly of all, it's honest. And that's precisely why it couldn't be the actual ending. Honesty is not a language that Miley Stewart knows how to speak. You get the feeling that she's picking Jake less because she actually still wants to be with him, and more so because her double life has just grown her so accustomed to this fear of change that permeates every aspect of her decision-making. Her just picking Jake at the end really makes it feel like the whole ordeal was just entirely unnecessary in the first place as well. The scene in which she breaks the news to Jesse is a complete dud simply because there's no stakes. It doesn't matter that she doesn't want to be with him, but she was never with him. It's like we're expected to be emotionally invested in this couple that doesn't exist. We literally just met this guy like 20 minutes ago. I don't care what happens to him. But of course she makes sure to kiss him on the cheek before she leaves. Now that seems a whole lot worse than whispering in someone's ear to me personally, but once again, we'll get to that in a bit. We see her run into Jake's arms as he putridly approaches her door, nervously hoping that he was chose, and woohoo, fairy tale ending, am I right? I will soon become very homicidal. I know I just spent a lot of time discussing he could be the one, but it's not for no good reason. What seemed like merely a throwaway ratings trap upon release ended up laying the groundwork for the bulk of Season 4. While the first few episodes are for the most part just completely run-of-the-mill standard low-stakes Hannah Montana pap, the entire midsection and climax of the season focuses deeply on Miley Stewart's dating life, which, I have to say, strikes me as extremely uncharacteristic considering how the show had functioned up to this point. Outside of the Jake Ryan storyline, Miley's love life was actually not really a focal point of the show. In fact, Jake is the only official boyfriend she has at any point in the series up until season 4. And even after she picks him and he could be the one, he's not really seen or even discussed at all for the remainder of season 3. Her love life exists, but it's never centered for more than one occasional episode at a time. Like I said, other one-and-done romantic interests like Trey or Johnny or Josh would pop in for approximately one episode, never to be seen or heard from again. A pattern that a 10-year-old me presumed Jessie No Name likewise would follow in the footsteps of. The show was always focused on Miley and her secret and her story. Boys were a mere afterthought because the most integral relationship in her life was the one that she had with Hannah Montana. Hannah Montana Forever is such a narrative travesty, not necessarily because she ended up with the wrong guy or because she decided to reveal her secret. In fact, revealing her secret by her own volition could have been the first real step towards Miley gaining her own psychological autonomy. But she didn't. The writers could have and should have given Miley Stewart a happy ending. Instead, they gave her a cold, sterilized implosion of her own identity that leaves you with more questions than you had before the start of the season. Now, when I say Miley Stewart deserved a happy ending, you may be scratching your head. After all, in a teen sitcom of this nature, there's only so much finality that can actually be established, and what dictates a happy ending is mostly subjective anyways. But here is where I have to stomp my foot down on my ultimate grievance, beyond any other complaints I have about Hannah Montana Forever, which, trust, there's plenty we'll get to. What irks my spirit the most is that by the end of the series, it's very clear that Miley Stewart is fundamentally unhappy. Over the course of season 4, we see Miley lose the love of her life, control of her identity, agency over her career, as well as control over her past and her future. Season 4 takes what could have effectively been a satisfying enough series conclusion at the end of season 3 and bastardizes it. It takes the already imperfect structure of Miley Stewart's life and strikes a wrecking ball through it until all that's left is the rubble of what she never intended to take with her into adulthood. It is legitimately painful to watch how Miley's spirit gets broken down throughout the course of these 15 episodes. And while you could make the argument that not all endings have to be happy, let me remind you that this is Disney. From the inception of its concept, Disney has always abided by an unspoken contract with the viewer that if you sit through the rising action, your questions will be answered and your wounds will eventually be healed. Cinderella gets her Prince Charming and leaves her abusive stepmother. Simba takes control of the Pride Lands and avenges his father. Snow White doesn't die of food poisoning. Sure, reality doesn't always chalk out the way you want it to, but Disney does. And this promise carried on into new incarnations as Disney discovered more ways to tell stories to children. Sure, they weren't princesses or damsels in distress anymore. They were pop stars and wizards and psychics. But the foundation of storytelling stayed the same. Beyond all else, the protagonist must find vindication at the end of the rainbow. There's a reason why Lizzie McGuire doesn't end with Paolo's plan coming to fruition, why Wizards of Waverly Place doesn't end in Alex getting cheated on by her werewolf boyfriend and being stripped of her powers. The evil or the conflict is meant to be vanquished on principle. The audience is just here to see how it happens. Just think of where we left off at the end of season 3. Miley ruminates on the idea of moving back to Tennessee for a couple episodes, all for Robbie Ray to decide to buy a ranch in Malibu that resembles a more rustic lifestyle. Of course, it wouldn't be a MASH-level finale in terms of perfection, but it would have worked. So what if Miley hasn't told the world her secret? Isn't that the whole point? Perhaps this ending could imply a more peaceful trajectory for Miley. Perhaps she learns how to build a healthier balance between her and her celebrity. It doesn't answer every question because it doesn't need to. Of course, one day Miley Stewart will reveal to the world that she's Hannah Montana, but we don't necessarily need to see see it on screen. We could simply leave her here in our hearts and imagination, happily sitting on her horse, looking out to her future that we can only assume must be brighter. Instead, we cut to the first season of season 4, where she looks like she's aged 4 years in a single car ride, extensions now inarguably more glamorous than the Hannah wig itself, donned by a lead actress who now has the enthusiasm of a Ross employee halfway done with a 2-week notice. There is something to be said about how Miley Cyrus's obvious burnout in of itself sets the tone of this season. In some way, it actually makes the misery her character is later subjected to feel more authentic. You really only need to watch 30 seconds of the first episode to be able to tell that she has unequivocally outgrown the wig at this point. This started happening gradually during season 3, but even then, it just seemed like the character was outgrowing her mental cage. In this season, it is fully unignorable that you are watching an actress who would probably be rather doing a million other things right now. Also, elephant in the room, there's something in particular that also casts a very dark, looming shadow over the tone of this entire season. If you were watching these episodes released in real time, you are aware that the season premiere transpired just a couple months after Miley Cyrus released her foray into adult pop with Can't Be Tamed. This album is deeply misunderstood on many fronts, mainly from a critical angle, considering it got dismissed immediately with mixed reviews at best upon release, even though it's genuinely one of the best mainstream pop records of its era. That's seed for another day. But it's also misunderstood in its content. By the way people were reacting to this album in 2010, you would think she had turned into Cupcake or something, all because she showed some midriff on the cover. As if this is even the first time a Disney starlet has ever shown midriff before. Contrary to its name, Can't Be Tamed is actually a very tame album in terms of its subject matter. The most suggestive lyric on the entire LP is an allusion to making love on her cover of Poison's Every Rose Has Its Thorn. Beyond that, there is literally nothing remotely sexual or even vulgar in any way on this album. It is very much a project made by a then 17-year-old. But there is one aspect worth noting. Miley Cyrus was tired of being Hannah Montana. A good portion of the songs on this album are entirely dedicated to telling you, the listener, just how tired she is of her job. It's pretty much a divorce album with Mickey Mouse as the toxic husband sleeping downstairs. This creates a kind of sinister meta-dynamic when you're a child watching this season after listening to an entire album where your hero publicly laments her frustration with the very machine that you were actively fueling. It created an environment where you as the viewer began to feel less like a fan and more like a prison warden. I remember being 10 years old and just feeling vaguely guilty every time I tuned in to view the wacky adventures of Miley Stewart. Mainly because I no longer saw Miley Stewart. I saw a very irritated Miley Cyrus half-heartedly reciting lines I can only imagine herself cringing at. Plot-wise, the first few episodes are, however, pretty inoffensive. We see Miley upset about her new room being a carbon copy of her childhood bedroom. She tries to hook her dad up with the school nurse. I even still get a little kick out of the episode where she misses registration and has to go to school as Hannah Montana. However, even in these kind of mundane episodes, there's still just something that's eerily off about all of it. Not just the acting, as it seems like every cast member is kind of checked out here except for Emily Osment, who really shows out this season to be the glue keeping the entire thing from falling apart. But the setting itself. This new ranch they live in is so polished, it looks less like a house and more like the lobby of a 4-star hotel. I'm not entirely sure if this has to do with season 4 technically being a new show, so they got a new set. It's widely known that Disney often likes to rebrand sitcoms as different programs in technicality after the 3rd season to avoid tenure fees, hence the name change. But regardless, removing virtually all of the signature sets the show had been using for 4 years all at once felt like you were watching some strange wormhole version of Hannah Montana, where everything is a lot less cozy and a whole lot more like a glitzy hospital room. They've replaced the iconic beach with some boardwalk that conveniently Rico suddenly wants to purchase. Even the school looks kind of different. The entire aesthetic is just jarring. It's the only season of the show filmed in widescreen, and for some reason, the cameras now have roughly 5 million more pixels. I swear I can see the pores and peach fuzz with this cinematography. The biggest crime that's committed in terms of the narrative within these first few episodes actually kind of has nothing to do with Miley at all. It's the extremely ham-fisted Jackson gets a girlfriend arc that approximately nobody asked for. Over the course of the series, we've seen Jackson date plenty of girls. He's arguably had a larger quantity of love interests than Miley, but this time they decided to make her stick around, and likewise, they decided to reduce Jackson's entire personality to being a boyfriend. We meet Sienna almost immediately in the first episode, and look, as a character, she's fine. She's not much else other than that, but still, her sheer presence isn't the problem. It's the amount of time that we spend developing, if this is what you want to call development, this relationship that is ultimately extremely shallow and uninteresting. Sienna and Jackson don't really seem to have anything in common. Most of their screen time they spend together, he's just blabbering on about how hot she is. He's very enamored with the fact that she is a pseudo-famous bikini model.
Sienna, a girl in fashion magazines, a girl who models bikinis.
Effectively, her entire personality is just being hot and sexy and, most importantly, available to Jackson. In fact, not just available, but unbelievably desperate for him. At some point, you feel less like this is actually a person who lives next door and more like it's just Jackson experiencing a euphoric psychosis in which he envisions his dream girl showing up at his front door one day and begging for him to shag her. There's an entire episode where Jackson is afraid to kiss her, and she is pathetically attempting to incentivize him to do so. Girl, get up. Ugh.
I feel so stupid. You just want to be friends, and I'm throwing myself at you.
The closest we get to depth between the two of them is when she overhears Jackson telling Rico that he wouldn't be interested in dating her if she had short hair.
So you're saying you wouldn't be dating Sienna if she had short hair?
Wouldn't have given her a second look.
So she pretends to cut her hair in retaliation to see if he'll accept her anyways. But of course it was just a wig, and Jackson breathes a sigh of relief and learns nothing. The amount of airtime they give to this sorry-ass excuse of a relationship is truly disappointing when you think of the kind of love interest they could have introduced for Jackson. They could have made Sienna a far more complex individual who actually challenges his extremely one-dimensional view of women. Instead, they just decide to affirm it and perpetually pacify him. The way they end Jackson's story in a professional sense is even kind of more depressing. Rico hooks him up with a job testing video games where he just lounges in a hot tub eating nachos as his girlfriend periodically pops in to affirm his masculinity. It's really a shame because the writers spent a good portion of season 3 developing Jackson's maturity, making him actually step outside of his comfort zone and grow some balls and actual prospects. He even has a love interest named Allison who encourages him to challenge himself intellectually. We see him apply to several colleges and even briefly attend community college, all to leave him with an ending where he can just essentially be 16 years old for the rest of his life and never have to question his extremely limited skill set or regressive sexism because he found both a job and a girlfriend who will just tolerate all of it. Yay! Because his entire arc is consumed by Sienna this season, we actually very rarely even see him interact with Miley at all. Beyond a couple dinner table chatting scenes, the only episode where their plots really intersect is when Miley has to tell Sienna her secret because Sienna thinks Jackson is cheating on her with Hannah Montana. This cleverly calls back to the Jacksana episode from season 1, and what do you know, this just so happens to be by far and away the best episode of the entire season. It's like the showrunners forgot that the sibling chemistry between Miley and Jackson is kind of the best part of the entire show. Instead, the main focus is on the relationship between Miley and Lilly, which is now even more condensed as well as codependent with the absence of Oliver. I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something extremely diabolical about Oliver leaving his girlfriend for 6 months that eventually turns into well over a year, considering he is still on tour when she's leaving for college, which leaves Miley to be her emotional rock. At this point, the attachment between Miley and Lilly is simply unhealthy. Not only are they now living together and sharing a room, which seems wholly unnecessary in such a large house, they spend the entire season structuring their lives around each other, with even the thought of a mild deviation between them being an unthinkable, heartbreaking impossibility. It's honestly bizarre when you think about the fact that they seem to be perfectly fine being away from their significant others for months and months on end, with both Jake and Oliver being completely MIA until episode 5. Yet if they have to spend more than 2 hours apart from each other, they start hyperventilating. The boys show up in the episode It's the End of the Jake as We Know It, the most unnecessary and infuriating episode of the entire series. After 4 years of will they won't they turmoil enrapturing the hearts of any viewer with good taste, Disney decided to end this generational love story with a half-baked cheating accusation. Now, before we get into why this episode is such a crock of shit, let's unpack the real reason why Disney decided to even do this in the first place, and why the horrendousness of this episode goes beyond the show itself. In 2009, Cody Lindley, the man who brought Jake Ryan to life, was caught having a torso in public with women touching him. He appeared to be under the influence of something, presumably alcohol, which of course is a no-no because he was only 19 at this time. This quickly resulted in him being dropped from the lead role in the Disney Channel original movie Starstruck, which was then reassigned to inferior blondie Sterling Knight. And likewise, it is widely also speculated that this was the reason they decided to shittily dispel his legacy Hannah Montana character in one 20-minute episode. Now, this is what really pisses me off about how they went about it. This wasn't just a character assassination. This was an intentional career assassination. Disney curated a dollar bin cheating scandal for a beloved character for the sole purpose of making the actor attached to him radioactive. Disney always blurred the lines between fiction and reality, especially when it came to Hannah Montana, from naming the main character after its actress to casting her actual father to play her father. This subconsciously fed the extremely young audience the idea that what they were seeing on screen was representative of reality. You cannot tell me they didn't know exactly what they were doing here. They had their panties all in a fucking twist because this young man wasn't on his most spotless purity ring behavior one night and it ended up in a Star magazine issue that 20 people read. It wasn't enough to merely revoke a potential breakout role from him. They had to rub salt into the wound by retroactively destroying the character he had already spent years building and making millions of preteen girls hate him by proxy. Yes, Disney is actually this petty. To this day, whenever Cody Lindley tries to celebrate his signature role by posting about it on social media, the comments are filled to the brim with, "I can't believe you cheated on Miley. I was Team Jessie. You stay away from her." Dude can't even post a retrospective tribute to his own character without people lined up to reprimand him. He's gone on record saying that both he and Miley Cyrus were very upset when they read the script for this episode, which you really can tell just by looking at their mannerisms. It's like the characters themselves know that this is narrative blasphemy. It must be some kind of hell to know your employers are blatantly forcing you to overwrite your own legacy and you have to act it out in real time. Now, you see, I personally wouldn't have let that slide, but that's just me. Now that we have the industry politics out of the way, let's discuss the actual logistics of this episode because this is where it gets even stupider. The episode suffers from this extremely unearned righteousness from multiple parties without even enough evidence to back it up. Oliver shows up and immediately informs Lilly that he has a picture of Jake cheating on Miley. Now, immediately there's like 3 problems here. A, I don't want to hear moral posturing about cheating from the same guy who was macking on babes number 1 through 15 right in front of his girlfriend, who is now likely cheating on her with tour groupies. B, this picture doesn't even prove that Jake is cheating. It's like a picture of what appears to be him whispering something to a person who happens to be female. By the way everyone reacts in this episode, you'd think it's a picture of him balls deep in Bonnie Blue. And C, once again, Jake Ryan has been famous since he was shitting his diaper and watching Barney and Friends. If he was going to cheat on his girlfriend, why would he be doing it in public where he knows people can and will take pictures of him? Oh, and D, if this really is some sort of infallible proof that Jake is cheating on Miley, how the hell does Oliver have the intel, yet the press doesn't? He claims he got it from a friend of his bandmate, which, I'm so sorry, is far too many hands to pass through without it getting to TMZ. A Jake Ryan has a new flame story would be front page news. Miley would learn about it from her publicist, not Oliver, weeks after it happened. In fact, since we've already established that Oliver is deeply obsessed with as well as in love with Miley, him being the ringleader of this entire cheating scandal, as well as it really being his only appearance in the entire season until the last 5 minutes, seems less like Jake is actually cheating and more like Oliver is concocting this entire situation to get Miley to break up with him. When Miley finds out and starts beating Jake with a sack of toys during her holiday special, Jake does admit to it though in a coded way, so I guess he did cheat. But honestly, he's just acting so out of character here. It's hard for me to fully take any of this seriously. You mean to tell me the same Jake Ryan, who has never stopped at any end to prove his love for Miley, just passively accepts her breaking up with him and dips? He doesn't even try to win her back. He doesn't even ask for forgiveness. He's just like, well, I guess I blew it, then dips.
Jake, you love me, you're sorry, and you want another chance.
But I'm not gonna get another one, am I?
Bye, Jake.
It's almost like he wanted her to break up with him, which, I mean, I wouldn't really blame him considering her father and both of her closest friends have wanted him dead for half the time they've known him. I imagine that has something to do with the fact that he rarely visits. I mean, the moment he walks through the door, Robbie Ray begins assaulting him, and this is before he has any knowledge of the photo. Just look at how the three of them stand there licking their chops, borderline cooming in their pants while they watch this breakup. It's disgusting. This is kind of the only way that I can make any sort of sense of this episode. Perhaps Jake wanted to break up with Miley, but didn't want to be the dumper because he didn't want her to feel bad about herself, so he played into this ridiculous smear job in order to make her feel like the executioner. It's effectively the same thing that she was trying to do to him during season 2 when she intentionally ruined his red carpet appearance. It's all a full circle. Perhaps Jake didn't actually cheat on her, he just took a page out of her own playbook and used it against her. He Hannah Montana'd her. He realized that when you're dealing with a girl whose entire life is built on a foundation of lies, there's no honest path to a clean break. Or maybe he just cheated. And in that case, I still really don't blame him because she kind of effectively did it first. Regardless, this is a bad episode that plagues the entire rest of the series. It's really the first domino that falls in terms of stripping Miley Stewart of any and all happiness she once had by the end. This then brings us to episode 6, Been Here All Along, a strong contender for the second worst episode of the entire series. Pretty much immediately after breaking up with Jake, Miley coincidentally happens to see Jesse No Name on the boardwalk and they hit it off. Now, immediately, this is really weird of Miley, and this is the one singular time in this entire video I will express any sort of sympathy for Jesse, so if you still like the scumbag douche monkey for some reason, savor this. Miley rejected Jesse as Hannah Montana. Jesse has no idea who Miley is prior to this. She is literally appropriating her core identity in order to have a second chance with a guy that would possibly not even want to give her one if he knew he was speaking to the same person.
Front row at a Hannah Montana concert. I just love her. I'm such a big fan.
I don't really work with her anymore. It's kind of, mess with my head.
This is an immediate foundational issue with any potential relationship that transpires from here on out. It doesn't matter that Jake is out of the picture now. It can never be retroactively altered that Miley picked Jake. She picked another guy over Jesse. He will perpetually be the silver trophy she settled for because the gold medal got away. Miley here is non-consensually signing this man up for cuckoldry. How sad. Alright, that's enough of that. Jesse is a worthless piece of shit. He's a garbage human being, and I hope he dies a bleak and a miserable death next to Spencer Walsh. Jesse asks Miley on a date for that very afternoon, and Miley subsequently cancels her date with her dad. Now, obviously, Robbie Ray, being Robbie Ray, gets irrationally upset about this. So upset that he even hesitantly proclaims contentedness with Jackson, which is how you know he's really mad at Miley. When Miley gets to the picnic date with Jesse, they get about 2 minutes in before he rudely takes a phone call and walks off without even explaining to her what's so important. Mind you, this is a first date with, as far as he knows, a girl who he has no prior history with. This is just extremely lacking in basic decorum. He literally leaves her standing there for what seems to be at least 15 minutes, waiting for him to shut the hell up, and eventually she understandably decides that she's going to leave because he's clearly not interested in her. Jesse then explains that the call was from his father, who was in the military.
I blew off a whole afternoon with my dad, and you can't blow off one stupid phone call with yours?
My dad's stationed in Afghanistan.
Who apparently doesn't have a phone except for like 2 times a month. Mind you, in the military, the only people who don't have cell phones are the recruits in boot camp. Even the drill instructors have cell phones, and even presuming that Jesse's father is a busy infantryman or something, which he likely isn't, considering Jesse's like 20 years old, which means his dad is probably like in his 40s. He most definitely has a lot of tenure and has been in the military for quite some time. There is no way in or outside of hell he's only able to call his son twice a month. This is Jessie testing both Miley's patience as well as her stupidity, and she is unfortunately failing. We have to remember that Jesse is canonically a complete womanizing tool as well as a slut. He's played this game before. This is how he gets chicks to fall in line and accept his nonsense. And it shouldn't matter regardless. Even if his ability to speak to his father is limited, he shouldn't interrupt a first date for 15 minutes without so much as a quick explanation as to what he's doing. That's just rude and inconsiderate. Yet he wants to sit up there on his high horse and condescend her and try to make her feel bad for expressing the fact that she felt disrespected by his blatant disrespect. And just to put it into perspective, imagine if he were on a date with Hannah Montana. He would have never done something like this. He's only doing it because he sees Miley as some regular old pushover floozy who he can treat like dirt. And even if his dad was in some precarious position to where he couldn't call his son more than once or twice a month, let me ask the audience, do you really give a fuck?
My dad's stationed in Afghanistan.
Oh my God, who the hell?
We don't care. Let me tell you, we don't care.
Do you give a single gravitational shit about the fact that Jesse's dad is in Afghanistan? Let alone so much so, to the point that you need to see a 7-minute concert dedicated to a character we never even see the face of. That's right, this episode of Hannah Montana just straight up turns into a military recruitment ad for the last 7 minutes. Just look at this audience, the kids don't even give a fuck. Honestly, no, this might even be worse than the previous episode, if not solely for how lazy it is. Roughly an entire third of this episode is just Hannah performing a ballad as a slideshow of random military families plays in the background. This feels like an especially strange decision when you consider the fact that they are trying to cram the development of the Jesse-Miley relationship into the literal last leg of the series. You would think they would take this time to let us get to know him a little bit more, but no. Instead, we get this weird 9/11 shit with Disney randomly trying to hammer patriotism into a bunch of disinterested 9-year-olds. To be fair, however, I can't imagine the character of Jesse himself being all that much more interesting than this. Thankfully, we're entirely spared of Jesse for the following 2 episodes, one of which being a filler episode where there's a fake-out death scare with her horse Blue Jeans, and the other in which Miley writes a song that her label won't let her release because it might alienate some of her fan base. They go so far as to have a sample group of children come in and vote on it, which ends in a decisive loss for Miley, even with Lilly attempting to sway the numbers. I get that this is supposed to be some kind of meta commentary on the musical evolution of Miley Cyrus herself. Honestly, it feels like the writer's subtly making fun of her in the process, but plot-wise, it comes across as just more verification that despite her massive success, Hannah Montana still has very limited creative control over her own music. She's in-universe released several multi-platinum albums at this point, with more #1 singles than the likes of Madonna or Beyonce. Yet she can't release a song she wrote because it sounds a little bit too edgy. And the thing that makes this whole episode even more absurd is that Gonna Get This is not really that different from any other Hannah Montana song. I suppose it's a little bit more electropop and synth-heavy than usual, but beyond that, I really can't imagine why this would be such a controversial release for her. The way her handlers react to it, you'd think the lyrics are about rolling a fat-ass doobie and shooting up the club. And you know, the more I think about it, the overall platitude of the song is really not all that different from damn song she's done even on prior records. I really do not see how the implications of the phrase "gonna get this" are all that different from "let's do this" or "let's get crazy," "life's what you make it," "pumping up the party." In the end, it seems like we get some sort of compromise when Ayaz duets the song with her. However, how exactly this solves the problem is never really explained. Like, what's different about it now? Is it suddenly commercially viable for a K-5 audience because you put the replay guy in it? If anything, I think making her banter with a 23-year-old man on the track just makes it more potentially suggestive. Well, regardless, I'm glad that we were able to come to some sort of compromise because the song is a banger, and I wish all the kids who voted against the release of it a lifetime of lunch detention as well as coal in their stockings. Burn in hell, you cultureless twerps. This finally brings us to the climactic episode of the season, I'll Always Remember You. This, of course, is the episode in which Miley finally reveals her secret to the world. You know, I think everybody who had watched this show for years had a feeling that this would inevitably happen. It was always just a matter of how so. But of all the ways I could have fathomed it, I think my least favorite might have been the idea of Miley giving up her secret for a man. And even worse, not even a notable man, but a man she'd been dating for literally like 2 weeks. Yet lo and behold, that is precisely what Disney decided to give us. At the beginning of this two-parter special, Miley reckons that she needs to tell Jesse her secret. Mind you, this is the first time we've seen him on screen since that terrible first date. We actually have not spent any time with them as a couple, really, for this scene to even feel remotely earned. What becomes very apparent from the get-go here is that Miley and Jesse's relationship is even more shallow than it appeared to be previously. And this entire opening scene, the only type of conversation that Jesse can muster up is to the tune of, "Wow, you get more beautiful every time I see you. Your eyes are so pretty." This is the absolute maximum depth of their communication. They don't have anything in common. They don't tell each other any kinds of life stories or revelations. Their entire dynamic is essentially just Miley sitting there as Jesse ogles her and tells her how physically attractive she is. Your potential enjoyment of Jesse as a character and subsequently this whole relationship entirely hinges on whether or not you find him hotter than Jake, which, what can I say? I'm a sucker for blondes. Sorry, Shark Boy. But in all seriousness, there is genuinely just no cake under the frosting here. Jesse and Miley really don't even have very much chemistry. I almost feel like I would believe them more as a pair of siblings rather than a couple. This scene winds up being pretty anticlimactic considering Jesse has already figured out the secret before she tells him. He was able to put 2 and 2 together after Hannah put on a military dad's tribute concert at the boardwalk the literal day after he was complaining about his father being in Afghanistan.
Right at me when I was front row at a Hannah Montana concert.
I don't really work with her anymore. She kind of messed with my head.
I didn't mean to. I mean to if I was her. Which I'm not, obviously.
He also tries to toss in there a performative, "Oh, well, I was able to tell by your beautiful smile and your eyes." Ugh, spare me, you opportunistic jackass. I think the writers threw this in because they thought it might seem romantic, like, "Oh, he was able to see through her mask," but all it really does is irritate me. Mainly because I know he's lying about it being a contributing factor, considering if he weren't lying, it would fundamentally violate the laws of physics of the entire Hannah Montana universe. This has been an unspoken rule since the very beginning of the series that they never even attempted to deviate from until this literal moment. Not even Miley's closest friends were able to tell that she's Hannah Montana. Miley sang in front of her classmates multiple times with Hannah Montana's voice, and still nobody ever put it together sheerly because of her hair color. Not even Rico. Yet you expect me to believe for a second that this scene-light lead muncher with the IQ of a dog turd was able to transcend this ever-present rule of the entire sitcom's internal continuum? It is a very clear boundary, regardless of her features or otherwise various physical identicality that would render her identity obvious in the viewer's reality. Within the Hannah Montana universe, the wig completely disguises her. Miley Stewart is canonically completely unrecognizable when she puts on the blonde hair. Point blank, period. Bottom line, cut and dry, end of discussion. And I really don't take kindly to fuck-faced McGee over here attempting to gaslight me into accepting that the entire logical foundation of my favorite show is just null and void simply because of his putrid lust. You are nothing. Kill yourself. And Jesus Christ, I am absolutely tearing up this one little scene, but still, it pisses me the hell off. And that's just the beginning, because this is where I start to get really damn heated. The first thing, and I do mean the very first thing that Miley tells him now that the cat is out of the bag, is to not touch her or flirt with her in public while she is dressed as Hannah Montana.
Just one simple rule. Just because you're mushy on Miley doesn't mean you can be huggy on Hannah. You're dating Miley, not Hannah.
Got it.
If the public finds out that they are dating, it will almost definitely turn into a cheating scandal when people find out he is supposed to be dating Miley. She literally cannot make this clearer. And what does Jesse do in the next scene?
I'm Hannah.
Of course, he kisses her on national television, completely uninvited, unincentivized, just decides to start macking on her right there on stage while she's trying to do her job, and then has the audacity to look all offended when she pushes him off of her. Immediately, Jay Leno's nosy, big-headed ass proclaims the two of them are dating, and if that wasn't already infuriating enough, the silver lining here is that there's still a way to potentially save the situation. She once again explains to Jesse that he must simply not touch her as Miley in public because that would obviously turn this into a scandal of far greater magnitude. And of course, he immediately manipulates her into hugging him in the middle of the boardwalk. He does this by announcing that his apparently perpetually deployed father is coming to visit, which makes sense considering, he's been in the military for 2 decades and most certainly has plenty of vacation time. This entire woe is me, I don't have proximity to my dad shtick is a complete farce. At this point, I'm convinced he is literally screwing with her on purpose. This is the only possible explanation for this. It's like he's still so bitter she chose Jake over him in the first place that he's intentionally backing her into a corner where she has no choice other than to reveal her secret. When he inevitably starts getting a ton of bad press for this, he starts throwing a tantrum and acting like this is somehow her fault, as if she did not warn him multiple times to not do exactly what the fuck he did.
But I'm worth it, aren't I?
What? What do I say?
As long as there's 2 of you, I don't think there can be an us.
As long as there's 2 of you, I don't think there can be an us. That is a very direct ultimatum with no room for interpretation. He is telling her she has to reveal her secret in order to keep him. I honestly think he was expecting her to keel over a lot easier than she did. He later comes back to reconcile because he obviously needs her to tell the secret somehow, and he realizes that keeping a distance from her is only going to make her more unlikely to do it. Miley even understands exactly what he's doing and calls it out verbatim.
Oh yeah. Be nice and guilt me into telling the secret. Well, it's not gonna work.
But the thing is, it doesn't really matter. She doesn't have a choice. Her moral compass will not allow her to just let Jesse walk around with half the population hating him for the rest of his life. She literally starts experiencing psychosis over it. He has single-handedly put her in a position to where she has to give in not just for his sake, but for the sake of her own sanity. There's a B plot line here as well where she's trying to get into college with Lilly, but the only way for her to be accepted immediately would be for her to reveal her secret to this Stanford registration lady. But I'm sorry, I just don't even take this into account. The stakes here are not remotely as high as they are with the Jesse situation. There's even a set out solution here in that Lilly offers to just take a gap year with Miley. And honestly, if she wanted to just tell the Stanford administrative board that she was Hannah Montana, they likely might just let her in and keep her secret. I mean, she got the entire town of Crowley Corners to do it. I imagine that the higher ups at one of the most prestigious universities in the entire world would be willing to comply with her in exchange for Hannah Montana's attendance. Plus, the worst case scenario here is literally just that she can't go to college with Lilly for a year. Beyond the ridiculous codependency here between the two of them that I will touch on when we get to the actual series finale more so, this is really not that big of a deal compared to the alternative issue here, which is Jesse's inability to exist in public spaces and live his life like a human being. It's very obvious which situation here is the one that pushes Miley over the edge. This scene where she reveals her identity doesn't feel victorious or cathartic. It feels desperate and hesitant. In some way, it feels like the most tragic ending to the Hannah Montana experiment you could possibly surmise. She's telling her secret not because she wants to tell it, not because she's ready to celebrate what she's done, but because a man forced her to. This scene isn't just the end of Hannah Montana, it's the dying breath of Miley Stewart's dignity. After an adolescence of being pulled in every which direction at the influence of those inside of her Panopticon, the moment it felt like Miley might actually have some sort of autonomy over her double life, the moment it seemed like for once she might be able to get to a place in life where she was in control of her own identity, it was all ripped away from her by this dirtbag, scum-stained bastard she'll likely be broken up with by Thanksgiving. It genuinely disgusts me seeing Miley up on that stage giving everything she's got to the most pivotal televised performance of her life, all the while his giddy ass stands there with a shit-eating grin on his face, proud of himself, feeling like he conquered something. He's genuinely repulsive. Fuck you, bozo. Fuck you. Fuck you.
The rest of the world isn't in love with Miley Stewart.
And neither are you.
Jesse, your horoscope says you are dangerously close to a slow, painful death.
You know, say what you want about Jake Ryan, but here's some food for thought. He never once took advantage of Miley's identity. He never tried to start up a public relationship with Hannah Montana, even though he likely would have been able to if he just asked her. He never tried to use his proximity to her to further his own career or claim her space as his own. He simply was in love with Miley Stewart, and all he cared about was protecting the relationship he had with her. Jake kept and respected her secret for years. Jesse forced her to give it up for him within the span of a couple weeks. Even though there's a few more episodes after this, they really pale in comparison to the dystopic implications of this one. This is where Miley Stewart's spirit was officially defeated. The moment that proved once and for all that she will never be in control of her own life or destiny. Every decision she makes is a compromise that she's making to benefit the people around her. And now there's no going back. Hannah Montana is done. Forever. But fret not, young one, for there's still a few more episodes to comb through. For example, a fake but also kind of real in a meta way Robin Roberts interview where you're not entirely sure if the person speaking at any given moment is supposed to be Miley Stewart or Cyrus, but it mainly just functions as a flashback episode to pad out the season to a full 15. We then get back-to-back visits from Aunt Dolly and Mamaw. You know, I always saw Dolly and Ruthie as representative of the ever-diverging paths within Miley herself, the person who desperately wants the fame, but also the person who deeply resents it, a dynamic naturally leading for two interconnected personas that are constantly at odds with each other. And you especially see that laid out in these two episodes, whereas Dolly serves as a great help to Miley in this situation where she's trying to adapt to life as a regular full-time famous person. Mamaw, on the other hand, struggles to accept that Miley's life will never be the same. She wants to be able to simply go out to a restaurant with her granddaughter without it turning into a free-for-all signing event. It's a question that the show doesn't fully answer because just maybe there isn't an answer to it. It's not that Miley prefers one lifestyle over the other, it's that she prefers different aspects of both that will never fully be satiated that sometimes contradict each other. She now faces a very peculiar situation. After spending years pretending to be both a normal girl and a famous girl, she effectively doesn't really know how to be either of them in actual practice. Now that the mask is gone, she's no longer performing her day-to-day life as if it's a TV show, and she doesn't really know what to do. Add on the fact that her fame is now more complicated than ever, considering she's receiving a massive wave of backlash for the first time in her career.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself. My daughter idolized you, and now you do this?
If this is Hannah Montana, and these are the hearts of children everywhere, this is what Miley Stewart has done to them.
The media uproar about her deception makes her national anthem scandal from season 1 or even Carrotgate from season 3 look like blips in comparison. Ironically, in trying to save Jessie's reputation, she partially tanked her own. Droves of angry parents and disappointed children alike are now treating her less like a superstar and more like a supervillain who killed their favorite superhero. In the series finale, we even see an instance where she's actively trying to get recognized at her college orientation, and it's just nobody really cares. It seems as though removing the wig has dulled the shine to her overall celebrity, which makes it all the more sensible as to why she jumps at the opportunity to do a movie with Tom Cruise and Steven Spielberg. This isn't just a chance for her to go shoot a fun film, this is an extremely necessary rebrand. But unfortunately, taking this role comes with an unruly sacrifice in that she wouldn't be able to attend college with Lilly. Of course, Miley being Miley, she can't just tell Lilly the truth, and she instead opts to try and irritate Lilly enough so that Lilly won't want to go to college with her. When Lilly finds out, she obviously gets very upset.
You don't know me well enough to know that, yeah, I would be really mad at you, but then I would be really happy for you. You just thought you'd do anything you could to make me not want to go to college with you? Well, congratulations, you got your wish. You're the last person I would want to go to college with.
That is until Miley realizes that Lilly wants to be invited to France with her. Just for a frame of reference, let's go over how this plan has changed multiple times since its inception. Initially, the plan was for them to attend Stanford together, but when it seemed like Miley might not get in until the next year, the plan became for them to take a gap year together. Then Miley reveals her secret, and likewise she can get in, so the plan goes back to square one. Then Miley wants to go do something else. Now Lilly wants to follow her. Lilly is so attached at the hip to Miley that at this point, she doesn't even have her own life. It's like she thinks if Miley is away from her for more than a week, she's gonna completely forget about her and find a new best friend or something.
I need to know that this friendship means as much to you as it does to me.
It's very telling that she seems to easily be able to not see her boyfriend for an entire year at this point, yet the concept of Miley not sleeping in the same room as her for a couple semesters drives her into complete mania. I already thought the codependency was pushing it when they insisted on moving in together in the first place, which led to her moving back and forth several times over the course of 2 days because they couldn't stop butting heads. Earlier, I called Lilly a parasite, and I feel like this really exemplifies it. She feels the need to latch on to every facet of Miley's life. That is until she doesn't. In one of the most staggering displays of growth shown in the entire series by any character at the last minute, Lilly decides that she's not going to go to France because it's not her dream. She encourages Miley to go, and finally remembers that she is her own person with her own aspirations other than being Oliver's girlfriend and Hannah Montana's best friend. We get a genuinely affecting goodbye that leads into a montage where they're singing a duet together, as we, the viewer, relive the glory years and watch them embark on their new chapters. It's almost a great ending. Almost. Yeah, in the last 30 seconds, Miley decides to just join Lilly in college. She rattles off some cope about how she's sure she'll find a different role in a movie or tour or whatever, but honestly, I don't know if I believe her. And that's not to say that she won't get said opportunities, albeit now that her reputation is in pariah mode, she might get a little bit less of them, but regardless, she's still massively famous and successful. The part that's hard for me to believe is that she will one day actually allow herself the self-preservation or personal space to do such. It's hard to imagine her really ever breaking out of her crib when she perpetually needs her Lilly Truscott pacifier. This moment is actually almost as sad to me as her being forced to reveal her secret for Jessie. Miley has gone from being the host to the parasite itself. Lilly was finally ready to embrace the future, yet Miley couldn't bring herself to grow up and is willing to sacrifice her career prospects to stay in a 10 by 10 dorm room with her bestie because that's all she has left from her past life, and her past life is likely what she's going to spend the rest of her life clinging to. If Miley Stewart started the series with the best of both worlds, she ends it with a vacant void of neither. Her new life isn't quite as glamorous, but it's also not quite grounded. Like I said before, there's more questions than answers now. Does Miley not at any point feel the urge to revamp her career over the course of 4 years of young adulthood? In fact, what is she even intending to study? Do her and Jesse actually last long enough to quantify this connection as anything more than a glorified situationship? How does the press inevitably react when they peel through the archives and they realize that Jake Ryan's girlfriend from 2007 was actually Hannah Montana? In fact, how does everyone react? Beyond Rico feeling bamboozled, as well as a very quick cameo from Amber and Ashley, who happen to just also be going to Stanford, does anybody else have anything to say? Does Tracy Van Horn have any thoughts about her close friend of several years not even being a real person? How about her past romantic interests, who must have just felt an entire puzzle snap together at once? How does Michaela feel about the fact that the same movie saboteur she ended up forgiving and befriending was actually just her biggest enemy out of disguise? Granted, I imagine that one would have been difficult to book, seeing as Selena Gomez and Miley Cyrus were still at odds over Nick Jonas around this time. That entire conundrum calls for its own video. Gee. All in all, Hannah Montana Forever doesn't leave you with the memory of Miley Stewart, the young, exuberant girl with the gumption to deceive the world all the while captivating it. It leaves our beloved protagonist and childhood hero locked away in a small room, clinging to familiarity as any autonomy over her own life has become seemingly a psychological impossibility. But I pose the question, what if I don't choose to remember her like that? After deconstructing all the problems I didn't quite understand before here, I've come to realize that I never had to accept them as canon in the first place. As far as I'm concerned, Miley Stewart's story before our eyes ended while she sat on that horse overlooking her future at the end of season 3. When the secret still kind of felt like it could be hers alone one day. A version of her that had the audacity to put what she truly wanted above what others wanted her to want. Was everything perfect? Most certainly not, but there was still hope. Hope that she could control the future of the identity thrust upon her. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough for me.